Good evening. I call the regular meeting for the Ames City Council for Tuesday, November 9th to order. Welcome, everybody. Council, you will note that we're working from an amended agenda tonight. And one item has been added, and that's a closed session at the end of the meeting. So with that, we're going to get started. We'll start off with a proclamation on Hunger and Homelessness Awareness Week. That's you. National Hunger and Homelessness Awareness Week. Whereas for the past 29 years, the National Coalition for the Homeless and the National Student Campaign Against Hunger and Homelessness have sponsored National Hunger and Homelessness Awareness Week. And whereas the purpose of the proclamation is to educate the public about the many reasons why people are hungry and homeless, including the shortage of affordable housing in Ames for very low income residents, and to encourage support for the homeless assistance service providers, as well as community service opportunities for students and school service organizations. And whereas there are many organizations committed to sheltering and providing supportive services, as well as meals and food supplies to the homeless, which include but are not limited to Assault Care Center Extending Shelter and Support, also known as ACCESS, the Bridge Home, Food at First, Good Neighbor Emergency Assistance, Mid-Iowa Community Action, also known as MICA, Story County Community Services, the Hunger Collaboration, the Salvation Army, Veteran Affairs, and Youth and Shelter Services, YSS, and other various churches and food pantries. And whereas the focus of National Hunger and Homelessness Awareness Week 2021 is to continue to volunteer, donate, educate. And whereas the City of Ames recognizes that hunger and homelessness continues to be a serious problem for many individuals and families in Ames, and whereas the intent of the National Hunger and Homelessness Awareness Week is consistent with the commitment and dedication of the members of the Two Rivers Committee and the Homelessness Prevention Team to educate the community and to provide the needed services and support to citizens who suffer from hunger and or homelessness circumstances. Therefore, I, John A. Hala, Mayor of the City of Ames, Iowa, do hereby proclaim November 13th to 2021 as National Hunger and Homelessness Awareness Week. On behalf of our community, I encourage all citizens to recognize that many people do not have housing and need support from citizens and private, public, nonprofit service entities. And so I'll turn the mic over to Vanessa if she wants to introduce her guests and also offer any comments.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for taking time to do this proclamation for National Hunger and Homeless Awareness Week. And some of my partners here tonight are from YSS, from Story County Community Services, the Bridge Home, and from United Way. And I just want to thank them and the other agencies, especially for the pandemic year. We really came together close to work together to try to get funding to our citizens and work together so that we try not to do a duplication, but spread the efforts for what we were doing. And I just appreciate the continued partnership that it brought for our citizens in both Ames and Story County. And then Annika from United Way is going to share an event that's coming up. And remember, we're here to volunteer, donate, and educate. So we still have bands.
Thank you, Vanessa, and thank you, Mayor Hala and the City of Ames for your ongoing support and kind of shining a spotlight on food and housing insecurity. I'm sure many of you are aware that housing insecurity has really risen during the pandemic, and hunger, unfortunately, it's been a long time issue here. More than 1 in 4 kids are eligible for free and reduced price lunch. That hasn't changed during the pandemic, and we have about 9% of our regular populace that is food insecure. So a real and pressing issue. So United Way would encourage all of you to stop by the library. We will have a week-long display across from the check-in holds area in the Ames Public Library from the 13th to the 21st. We're setting it up on Friday. We're going to be sharing statistics and also resources, both for those who are in need of food and housing assistance, and also hopefully engaging some more community members in the work of supporting our partner agencies, such as those that are here. So again, from the 13th through the 21st at Ames Public Library. Thank you.
All right, moving on to consent agenda. Council, does anyone wish to pull any item from consent tonight?
Mayor, I would like to pull item 15.
Okay. Anything else? All right, I'd entertain a motion approving consent less item 15.
So moved. Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Aye.
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 Gloria?
So I pulled this item primarily because ever since the renaming of Iowa Creek earlier this year, we've been asked, why aren't we renaming these other locations within the city that involves the racial slur that used to be the name of our Iowa Creek? And we've been telling them that's coming. And so I hated to see this buried on the consent agenda because I think it's an important item and it pairs well with what we'll be talking about later in the meeting. So
Okay.
that's it.
All right. Do you have a question or comment?
No, I'm just here in case you have any questions.
Any questions for Tracy? All right. All right.
So
Thank you.
I would move approval of item 15.
Thank you. All right. Moved and seconded. Roll call.
Aye.
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 Thank you. All right. Moving on to public forum. This is a time we set aside for members of the community to address council on items of city business other than those listed on the agenda. And please understand, council will not take any action or on your comments due to the open meetings law. So we would ask people limit their comments to no more than 3 minutes. And I'm going to go in order of the cards that have been submitted. And the first is from Paul Redhead. So if you would please introduce yourself and you may proceed.
Hi, my name's Paul Reedhead. I live on Ridgewood Avenue. I'm a 48-year resident of Ames. My comments relate to the Ames 2040 plan, the climate action plan, and garbage service. So I'm going to read it because that'll get me in my 3 minutes. So I went to the public viewing of the Ames 2040 plan. I talked to the person who was pointing out the map, showing the areas of new growth where they will happen. And I asked about housing density in those areas. It appeared to me to be very similar to what is currently happening in Ames. I didn't get a direct answer, but I assumed since I didn't get a rejection that the person didn't agree with my observations. I also attended the recent public meeting on the Ames Climate Action Plan. Part of that presentation estimated the CO2 emissions that would increase if we continued business as usual. I think the Ames 2040 plan seems to continue a business as usual approach, at least as it relates to residential housing. Since the 2040 plan will be approved first, I hope you will amend the 2040 plan to conform with the Climate Action Plan goals. The Green Hills and North Crest communities are really good examples of increased housing density in Ames that look nice and serve a great purpose. I also recently did an informal survey on garbage service for residents between the area of 6th and 13th Street, Grand Avenue, and Brookside Park. That's the area, that's my neighborhood. There are 8 providers who do curbside service out of 10 listed on the Ames city website. 2 of those providers are located in Ames. The rest come from Nevada, Boone, Slater, Ankeny. 4 providers out of that provide 1 or 2 day services names. I presume that's because they don't have enough business to do more, but they cover the whole city, at least based on my survey of my area. So what we've got is a lot of increased traffic. The worst situation is on Orchard Drive, where I live right next to Orchard Drive. In that 2-block area, 5 carriers pick up garbage service on Thursday afternoon. Now, interestingly, Ridgewood Avenue is, I've talked with the city engineer about streets. Orchard Drive is a cement street, and Brook Ridge and Ridgewood are asphalt streets. There's a difference in terms of load-bearing capacity in streets. So the city engineer's office told me that residential streets are not designed for trucks weighing 30 to 66,000 pounds. Our garbage service is costing the city and taxpayers additional money due to decreased street longevity, increased street maintenance. It results in increased fuel consumption, noise pollution, and additional traffic. It impacts air quality and quality of life. A better way would be if the city of Ames managed and regulated garbage service. Other cities do it, and it makes sense for Ames, and it will enhance our climate action plan. I have more information, but that's about my 3 minutes. And so I'd be glad to provide, well, in fact, we will be providing that through the Ames Climate Action Team in a document to the council. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I apologize mispronouncing your last name. Next is Merlin.
Good evening. I guess the mayor is still not comfortable trying my last name.
Fancook.
Eh,
Okay. Well, it's too
I'm Merlin Foncook. Good evening. I'm Merlin Foncook, 1424 Kellogg Avenue. In football, too many delay of game penalties might cost you the game. Unfortunately, I think Chuck Winkleblack has had too many delay of game penalties for his proposed hotel and retail area along Lincoln Way that it has cost him and Ames. Winkleblack has 3 times given us information so late that we can't evaluate the proposal reasonably at that stage. Even if Mr. Winkleblack has been doing his best, it's just not good enough. The proposed development would alter downtown Ames forever. So we have to make sure it is right before any dirt is turned. Now, we might get the concept in time for council to look at it November 23rd. There is simply not enough time to get a developer's agreement by December 31st. Once Thanksgiving arrives, our attention turns to the holidays. And December is going to be the time for us to evaluate whatever concept is forthcoming. Seriously? I have little confidence that council can evaluate this proposal adequately. The consultant's figures claiming about the first idea about the concept that it could produce 15 million in retail sales taxes over 20 years was highly questionable. It was based not on an independent assessment of projected sales, but entirely on the square footage estimated by Winkleblack. How are we going to get any decent financial estimates in a month? I thought of some possible alternatives for this December 31st deadline. Undoubtedly, staff has too. But if so, why haven't they been shared with the public? I think our practice of normally including things only on the agenda when council action is needed has dug us into a hole here. Yes, the public has not said all that much so far. But it's hard to say much when you don't know what the final concept is. It still may include what I think is the loony idea of a pedestrian bridge over the railroad tracks, so the developer can increase revenue. So unfortunately, I'm afraid that we have to tell Mr. Winkleblack his consistent lateness has cost him that $25 million tax break he was hoping to get, and the city up to $10 million for the aquatic center. Thank you. Do I have any time left, Your Honor?
You're right at 3 minutes, but you have something else you want to share? You're right at 3
Oh, I
minutes.
just want to note that I really appreciate the reference staff at the library. They do a great job. I've had more computer modem problems the last week than I'd care to burden you with, I guess. And particularly Alan helped me today solve something I needed like in less than a half hour, and they consistently do a great job over there.
Thank you. And another card from Christopher Pettit. I hope that said it right. Is that right?
Good evening, everyone. Shalom. I'm not sure where to start, but I'm Christophe Petit, and I live in Ames since a long time now, over 5 years. And it's a great community to be here, everyone. That's why we are all here together to hear what each other have to say. So let us be thankful in this wonderful month that of Kislev, the month of dreams, where we can make every dream come true with all our voices so that we can opinion ourselves and issues regarding the situation today in this world. Nevertheless, let us not be afraid. The only point that I see in this community is that I've seen this community being very welcoming. First of all, I'm here to express my gift of thankfulness to the community, the people that have a positive attitude in this place, in this world. I've just encountered some issues myself regarding some businesses, city, that have the tendency to have had the audacity, I would say, to impose their way of being onto me, myself being a resident, I'm Ames. Regarding the healthcare opticians, for example, I was refused service into one business for not wanting to put a mask to the examination room. I do not veil my face. It is my belief, individual, and convictions upon it, and I will not go against my conscience. So therefore, if I serve my God, who would go against him? Is another business or another organization above the creator of the whole universe, which Hashem has made all of us into his shadow? Should we forget about his law, his spirit, why he brought us into this world, into this place? I will just be patient and wait upon the right people who take action to simply enforce that everyone should obey the law, no matter a business or a person, a foreigner or a native person of this land. So I would just wanting to ask if someone could just simply make businesses respect and understand people's individual religious beliefs and treat people as human beings and not as simply a person that would just bring money to the business. And I had the money in hand. There was no problem about it. I kept the peace and I just prayed about it. And also, I also want to bring another issue in regard to this issue, what we're having today with the school, with the children, and with the medical, what the CDC says. I believe it is for the best of all that we make a difference between the school and the medical field, especially when I ask the doctors if they know what contains this injection. Nobody knows what it is. Why would a person be consenting to take something that the person does not know what it is, what it does to your body? And I'm very concerned about this issue and what we all of us will experience negative impacts if we do not take action here and now. It's never too late. We can make a difference now and take it seriously. It is a very alarming situation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anybody else want to address council tonight under public forum? Okay, we will close public forum and let's move on to item number 21, presentation of results of Play Ames, Imagine Your City. Steve, do you want to
No, I think
introduce anything here?
Link is going to speak.
All right.
Okay, thank you very much for this opportunity for us to be able to present Play Ames, Imagine Your City. Thank you to everyone present here. My name is Alenka. Can you hear me well?
Just 1 second. Can people here in the back?
Maybe I should
Speak
Closer?
Right, you have to speak right in.
like this?
Here, Clay.
Yeah,
Okay.
the microphones are.
Touch it?
There we
Oh, yeah, good. Close. Okay, so good. Alenka Poplin is my name. I'm an associate professor at Iowa State University. And here is my team. So maybe you want to say your names. These are student, graduate, undergraduate student team leaders. So
I'm Fatima from East 7th Street.
I'm Vishnupriya Sairamish. I led Franklin Park.
I'll just project. My name is Natalie, and I was the team leader for the Fifth and Burnett with the mural.
And we have a fourth one, Stella Schroeder. She was our expert from Peru. She's a PhD student, and she sends greetings to everybody. She cannot be present here physically today. But besides the team leaders, we had a group of 26 students from the Smart Cities and Smart and Sustainable Cities class. And this is our grand opening. Also, our big supporters, Steve Schenker, city manager, Professor Francis Owusu, and Dr. Gloria Betcher. Thank you so much. And of course, Mayor John Halila. Thank you for all your support of this project. And my thanks to the team and students. Nothing would be happening without the big support of the students and the city. And of course, the funding coming from City of Ames and CRP Community and Regional Planning Department collaborative fund. So the background, in January 2020, we signed a request for assistance between the City of Ames and CRP College of Design ISU department, and with the main focus to study community engagement with communities, and a focus on underrepresented and marginalized communities, and how to develop some really engaging methods, strategies, and technologies that would enable us to engage the communities, and testing those and giving feedback to the City of Ames. So that was our main goal. And this was happening in other studios. So we started with a studio that studied City of Ames, but then moving towards engagement. And two main findings from this report, Engaging Residents in Urban Planning, while the students were interviewing experts across the US about successful engagement strategies, were to, number one, bring participation into the neighborhoods, so meet the residents where they are at. And the second, number two, offer a mixed method of participation to reach different audiences and communities. And thinking about those two aspects, we actually put our heads together, so to say, and said, what can we do? And came up with the idea to organize a festival. So what would it be to organize a community engagement festival where we could go into the neighborhoods and bring the engagement into the neighborhoods? Here are the 4 locations on the poster. You see where we were at. We also follow this idea of engaging city officials, urban planners, city councilors in the activity. And we attracted 3 additional partners, Climate Change Action Theater, Yoga with Michelle Flattery, and ISU Flex pop-up van with virtual reality. And I'm going to go rather quickly through the activities because I would like to spend more time discussing the findings and lessons learned. So bear with me if I'm fast. So I'm going through locations and activities. So look, oh, and of course, here's how we did it. Zoom, 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 Zoom meetings over the summer. So this is our last meeting preparing for this meeting. So locations, reliable street, guerrilla gardens, planting bulbs, combined with painting stones, so residents can place a stone next to the bulb, so to remember that they planted a bulb on that place. Reliable street origami, kind of involving, engaging in creating origami, asking questions. What is your favorite place? How would you improve the city? What is your vision? Then creating the flowers and planting them in the garden as well. The next one, playing urban planning games, still reliable street. Location number 2, Franklin Park. Breathing games. So this was a game consisted of 10 different activities. The idea was to explore sensing the city, how we sense the city, how we sense ourselves. So it's about senses and sensing. And combined with that, a yoga experience for all, including kids that really enjoyed it, very much so. And still Franklin Park Barefoot Path, where people could take off their shoes and step into different materials, and then also have that experience of different materials that they can feel in the city. Location number 3, East 7th Street, was a lot about mapping. So we engaged residents with the help of digital mapping. Here on the you can see starts with the game, spot the differences, and then creating a map with benches and teaching how to do that and sharing with residents. The next one was paper mapping, so mapping with the help of a paper map and asking residents how do they feel about the city, where do they feel safe, where are unsafe places as an opportunity for sharing. And East 7th Street, a pop-up van with virtual reality, a roller coaster experience, highly technologically supported. And the last location, 5th Street and Burnett Avenue, mural painting. A community comes together, paints a mural, paint by number, so that you can choose a color and then find the number of your color and paint that spot on the mural. So these were the activities. And now, how can we evaluate that? We used 3 different evaluation methods. So one was a photoethnography, which means taking a lot of pictures, looking at the pictures and trying to understand what was happening, who was there, who looks engaged. Engagement survey was a classical, typical survey asking residents how do they feel, did they feel engaged? And we also developed kids-friendly survey, which you can see here on the slide. You see the activities, and then the kids can pop a sticker on and say whether they liked it or not and how much they liked the activity. What have we learned? We learned that many of the activities, and I will expose those that got the most votes as the most engaging, were the activities that were creative. So where the residents created something, painted stones, created origami, collaboratively painted mural. And it feels like they gave them some kind of a sense of accomplishment, satisfaction, creativity, And also many of them led to a final product. So they saw the product being produced and they could take the pictures home. That was nice. The activities that were experiential, so where you could experience something. So you experience the breathing game, you experience the barefoot path, virtual reality were also very much beloved. The technology is of interest to a lot of people. Older, they see that they are in a safe environment where they can try and test, and younger are excited anyway. And the fourth one, what we also recognized is those activities that focused on participants' perception. So they were like, when we show them that we care, that we honestly want to know how they feel, how they perceive, they were also very successful. So do you feel safe? Where do you feel safe? Many wanted to contribute to that. Recommendations, if there is any other festival or in general engagement. So create creative, experiential, technology-based activities. They should be rather short, active, well displayed and presented. Easy to grasp. So if it's too complicated, like urban planning games that take a lot of time to learn and play, they didn't find so much audience. So simple, creative, and creating final product is very good. What is also good is combined with planning issues. So we should do more of that. And encouraging participants to share is very welcome. And you need to have enough staff at the location to support all of those activities. Who were the participants? It's not the exact number, but it's about 250 people came to the locations to be at the festival, to be engaged. Interesting, big group, 19 to 30, these were the students. But the interesting thing for me was that we had about 30% over 51, so 51, 65, and over 65 percent more female, and a race distribution typical for Ames, Caucasian, white, and the majority Asian and African, a smaller percentage. What did we learn about engaging underrepresented? Well, often we hear how to engage students. We have a problem. So I can say that this was an amazing opportunity where the students prepared a festival. They were engaged, they were sharing, they were communicating with the residents. So this is definitely a forum in which you can engage students. The other thing that we learned, the neighborhoods we visited more often, like East 7th Street, because we had some issues defining the location. And so we visited it more often. We met some people in person, and all those people came. So it's visit the neighborhood more often and talk to them in person was really a very, very successful strategy. We also feel that developing activities together with residents and maybe some kind of place making would be very successful as well. In our discussions, we were thinking what we missed somehow was maybe a neighborhood leader we could talk to that would be connected with the neighborhood, so we could have the network of those neighborhood leaders would be very helpful for something like that, that would represent the neighborhood and would be our partner. We think that, well, this was the first festival, yearly festival would open up the door for more people to come and join. It was the first time. Many didn't know that they can join. And work with them, connect with them regularly, develop a long-term strategy to work with them. It's what we can recommend. What did we learn about locations? Locations that were in the neighborhood, and we didn't quite understand when we said in the neighborhood, what does this mean? So I want to share what does it mean The successful one was the one is at the top, is East 7th Street, was really in the middle of the street. We had to do this. Thank you for closing the roads and enabling us to do this in last minute. But people were passing by to go home, to be in the neighborhood. This was the most successful location in terms of attracting the local residents. And we believe that placing in Franklin Park is in the neighborhood, but it was a big location and kind of separated from the neighborhood, and people were passing by, didn't know that they are invited. This is for them, because it was kind of also a big location. Something similar happened with Reliable Street, where the Reliable Street was kind of served almost as a little bit of a barrier, where the neighborhood houses are turned away from the street on the other side. So it was placed in the neighborhood, but it was not so well integrated in the neighborhood. So we have a different understanding now. What does that mean? Further lessons with city officials. I just took the city officials for everybody, city councilors, planners, chairing the departments. The experience was with the residents, what they reported was really great, like interesting, engaging, very friendly, encouraging, pleasant. And of course, we have here, thank you for bringing this bike. And I heard that some residents enjoyed the ride as well. Thanks. And we see, of course, Gloria. What is here to note is something for the festival and experiences, that only 27% of those that we interviewed indicated that they talked to the city officials. So only 27. This is not enough. Either they were not aware of that, or they just only a few, only 27%. So we want this percentage to be higher. How do we achieve this percentage to be higher? We think that they could be involved more closely in the activities, in the engagement activities, be part of the activities. Design, we should design with you the activities more closely, relate them to the concerns of the city. And develop this thoroughly, so that you can see in the second picture down below, maybe not so well, but here is the activity happening in front, but the city officials are in the back, kind of separated from the activity. So more integration is needed here in the future. Quick conclusions. We believe that the great thing was that the festival brought a lot of good spirit, amazingly positive atmosphere, enjoyable environment. We were so lucky with the weather. It was sunny and beautiful. The day was gorgeous. Students were in a very good mood. There was creativity and sharing. I think this is a potential in engaging residents in creative, sharing, playful, technology-based, experiential way. We think that bringing this more into the neighborhoods would be the step to go next time. Assure that there is a continuity in relationship between the neighborhoods, neighborhoods, and the organizers and the city. Visit neighborhoods more often, talk to the residents in person. And there is, it's a forum that represents a great potential for engaging students. Now, one more thing, and then that's it, visions for the future. We developed some great ideas how to bring into the neighborhoods. We go back to this idea that we had in the discussion with the mayor as well, in the previous studio, where was a pop-up van. We are developing this further, saying it can be pop-up van in terms of a festival, or pop-up van that goes into the neighborhoods, is equipped with equipment, with city officials come with it, have the topic, and bring the van into it's kind of a movable festival, bring into the neighborhoods and do this regularly. Maybe the same question to different neighborhoods regularly would be a great idea, we think. One can think about topical festival, which would be, let's say, climate change plan 2040, sidewalks, sustainability. We feel that city could promote family, students, and kids-friendly aims a bit more with the help of a festival, maybe, and engage students for the city with the city, and that there is a need to assure some kind of continuation of the activities, either with a dedicated organization or a budget or a engagement strategy, maybe plan that you develop how to move forward. So many people helped us to create that. All the thanks are here. And thank you so much to everybody for listening. And we will be happy to answer the questions. And my team is ready to answer the questions. So I was given the chance to present, but the team is happy to share more.
Thank you very much. Council.
I hope I was not too fast with the whole,
Well,
Okay.
your report was very thorough also, so appreciate the effort you put into that. And I think all the council probably read through it also. So it was a good, hopefully get the slideshow. You did a nice job of summarizing some of the main points too. It'd be helpful to have. Any comments, questions?
Well, so you made recommendations for us. What do you think the role of the city should continue to be in relation to a festival that was organized by students, run by students, and really students made it work?
Yes.
So what should our role be? Well, I can ask the team here too.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, go ahead.
So even if it's organized by students, it's going to be, we can get the response from the residents. And for any comprehensive plan or for any future vision plan, we need to know what people like about the city and what they need to see the changes. So they are the people who can express their opinion the best way, which is really true. So that's how I think we can make the bridge. As a facilitator, we can make the bridge between the city officials and the residents. Thank you.
Sorry. I guess what we envision is more collaboration. So hearing from you guys what it is the city is focusing on for that year, what are concerns that you guys are seeing that you would like to address, bring those to us. We can help facilitate and create activities that are directly focused on addressing those issues and getting that feedback from the community members. So as the students, we are still able to facilitate, gain experience, and put this out there for everybody to be involved in. But I guess we're just looking for some more information, some more collaboration with you guys on specific topics.
Yeah, and to add on to what the team has told, I feel like this could go bigger in other sense. We have a lot of things that the city wants to address. We have a lot of things that the communities want to address, and we also want to make sure all of the voices are being heard. Franklin Park has a majority of different demographics, but we were not able to cover that, which means we need more time. And so there might be a case where an engagement festival or even an engagement can not just happen in a day, but rather we need to take its time and give it like a week or 15 days or 30 days or whatsoever. Because even recently, in class, we had a director of Johnston County who came in and talked about their engagement strategy and how it was their first as well, but they took time and it worked. And it was amazing how we can use all these visions to kind of like contribute it to the 2040 plan or 2050 plan whatsoever. So these can play a major role in that. Apart from that, the students for the city and with the city is a really good point. These students want to learn and these students want to be part of it. And because of Gloria and Steve, we were able to get in touch. We were able to experience it and give what we could as students. And so we are ready to work for it. So as we are really excited to do that. So if you guys are, like you can tell what you need next time with the engagement strategies. Now we know what works and doesn't. We can add in questions for the city and people could answer those questions in creative ways. And so people cannot just do murals. They can actually paint what they like about the city, what kind of like maybe might be disturbing. They could kind of like write it in a Post-it note and post it. And so all of that can be addressed and got back and used to make a better future plan. So.
I have a comment and a question. First, a comment about the relatively low level of engagement with city officials. I know I played a role in the low level of engagement because I'm kind of an introverted person, right? I really need a role. I need, a reason to be there and a way to interact with people kind of given to me. Sorry, but I think I'm probably not alone in that. So this is something that I don't know how to do it, but I think we should try to keep that in mind to really give us a role. That would be helpful. And then my question is, based on your experience, what would you hope for in terms of scheduling another type of event? Would you be looking for another like one event next year or maybe a few events? Or do you have a timetable in mind for starting to grapple with those sorts of questions?
Yeah, I will try to. I think a lot of things have to come in place to be able to do that, either on regularly basis or kind of. It requires a lot of preparation. So we were working the whole summer to do that. It requires some kind of continuity planning. And it requires staff and budget. So definitely there was a lot of volunteering work here. And it's quite an endeavor to do it. So it would probably, require some kind of vision, how to do it in the future. So it could be, it could be part of a class. It could be part of continuing collaboration between the city and the department. It could be, so I believe that we need some kind of a frame for this collaboration that would enable us to do to continue with the work. I don't know what that is. That can come in many different forms. It depends if you wish another festival, if you wish more kind of working on strategic plan. So that would need to be kind of sorted out. What are your wishes and needs? And then how can we enable some continuity in the collaboration?
Well, let me just follow up by saying that I'm really glad that you took the first steps, as you wrote in your report. This baby needs nourishing care and continuing communication. And I think we have a good opportunity here to try something next. I hope that there is something next.
Yeah, we hope too. So we were there was what I noticed, there was so much enthusiasm about it. And when I say good positive atmosphere, it's really the spirit. As it's in creating the spirit, it's a lot of positive things can happen. So
I just say thank you for your investment in our community and helping us to learn. And it sounds like it was a really good experience for the students as well. Are there other things that we could be doing other than the festival format? Some cities will have the mayor or city council members will have a coffee event or something in a particular neighborhood that we're trying to target to get more feedback from. Are there any other suggestions that you would have about things that we could do that might help us to engage?
And I'm gonna, so in Stella's location, Lockwood Cafe, I'm sorry, I don't remember the person who's in charge of Lockwood Cafe. But she was talking about. Yeah,
Sharon Stewart.
So she was talking about how they have like, pop-up, like people could donate their dresses and they can just be there and come and take. And there are people who recycle plastic and stuff like that. So my point is, if there is like a community, if we can have like a center where community can just come and contribute, they can do recycling, they can donate to people. If there is a place, if there's a way we can manage that. And also, if there is a way that someone or someone from the city officials can come in and then be there once a month. So everything requires consistency. I feel when we start creating that, and it all is a small step, like she said, once we find the community leaders or even find the community and a place where we can set that up, it is going to start small and it will grow. It needs to be just consistent and say that, let the people know that we're going to be here this time. It could even be the farmer's market. You can let them know that there's going to be a booth where there are city officials, and you can just come in anytime and let us know your points of views, what is bothering you about the city, what you really love about the city, and everything. And so consistency and a certain place, even farmers market should have started small, and how it is now with the consistency, it's in a better place right now. So I feel if that happens, not just in a farmers market, but in different points of the city, that would be really helpful for the different communities to know that they're welcome to come in and, like talk their heart out. Because we don't know that farmers market or any other festival that everyone comes in. But when it's there in every community, they know that they're welcome, and it is their responsibility as well to contribute to that.
So maybe just short, students and I, when we were bouncing the ideas, I just figured out we have so many ideas. It's not a problem with ideas. It's more a problem maybe what do we want to achieve, or what would you like to achieve? And then it would be, okay, here is a spring of ideas, no problem. It's like, what would you like to achieve? And then we can say, how can we get there? What is the path? Do you want long-term relationship? How do you establish a long-term relationship? Kind of more, I think what would really be good is kind of a strategy of engagement with some goals. What would you like to achieve? And then we could help create ideas how to do that from what we learned, and engage more students in the process.
I would like to share my experience from the event. So what we have learned that everybody likes to play games. The playfulness kind of invited people to participate in our activities. If I just pulled out my phone and talk to a stranger that, do you want to map this bench? They would say no. But if I say that, do you want to participate in the Spot the Differences game? That's how they approached us, because they wanted to play. And then they moved on to spot the location where they feel unsafe. So that's how the activities progressed. So like Coffee with Urban Planners, if we can lighten the environment a little bit, like with a small game, with a less time consuming game, probably that would make the city planners or the city officials a little less intimidating.
Yeah, I will second that. Informal gatherings would be the best way. I work at the Dean of Students office, and they do donuts with the DSO, or they'll have ice cream, and it's just a way for our staff members to be out there. They have students walk by, they'll have a small 30-second conversation with them, kind of get some feedback, hand out some information on the resources that the Dean of Students offers. So it's a great way to give feedback, but also to not be as intimidating. Be like, I just addressed a council member about a issue that I have been seeing. It's a little different than saying I just had like a little quick conversation, said hi, kind of addressed something. But informal food, always a great option, especially if you're looking at getting college students. And then with the poverty and homeless that was just addressed today, that is also a great way for engagement, is food. With someone's hardest to their stomach.
So you're saying the pop-up van has to be a coffee van or perhaps a food truck? Is that what I'm hearing?
Possibility. That van could be multi-use, depending on how we would like to fashion it.
Okay. Any final questions?
Thank you. Food festival. I had fun at the drink or the 7th Street location. That was good.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank them again. They've heard it from me multiple times, but I have really appreciated the interaction and this engagement with the planning team. And I think that if we look at the report that we got from a semester ago, it's all kind of merging together in my mind. There are a lot more ideas that have been tried elsewhere, and I think that this has potential to be something that we can do with consistency and build on. So thank you very much.
As you close, I think one thing we don't want to presume upon is students doing all the work.
Yes.
And I think that these two exercises have been, excuse me, with a curriculum and a class focus, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think that needs to be teased out in the future in terms of who's going to do all the heavy lifting, and not to assume that your classes are always going to be doing it unless it fits, I would presume, within a specific class or course objective. Would that be accurate? Or
Yeah, that it would probably have to be like a class that is dedicated to it, so we can continue, dedicate the same class to the engagement. That would probably be the best. Otherwise, there's no continuity, and that is probably a possibility. There is our department chair here listening. It needs to be discussed. I can't promise it needs to fit in the curriculum. It also affects all kinds of decisions that are related to the development of our curriculum and the needs of the students. So,
and I presume that you're going to be documenting, unless you're going to be students forever, which I doubt is probably the case.
yeah, and then they, of course, they graduate, and then they go out in the world.
So the continuity of
and they, of course, we get new students, and so there is a question, if this can really be covered or solved by, with one class working on it, or you want to have additional solution that would be more, that would kind of provide more stability in sense of presence and definitely I can start a discussion about the possibilities creating a course or involving other colleagues. We can have this discussion. But maybe that is not the only solution that we would suggest for the situation. Depending on one class might not be a strategically the solution. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Yeah. But we greatly appreciate, I mean, this would also not be possible without Gloria coming to our class regularly, Steve as well, all your support. It was really an amazing collaboration. Thank you so much. We learned so much from you, and the students were always very, eager to hear what you can share. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very
so
much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, you move on to item number 22, staff report regarding downtown plaza update.
The team is here.
Well, while Corey's getting that ready to go. So good evening, everybody. And just wanted to, the three of us, we do have Matt and Caitlin from Confluence. They're going to be kind of going through very quickly a PowerPoint, but we'll have Corey kick things off.
Yeah, so we're here with Confluence today to kind of go over the downtown plaza. We're at a point where we think it's a good idea to get some feedback on where we're at. We've kind of got to the kind of what we're calling the design development stage. We kind of have the 2D kind of layout done. We're not really into the construction document phase, the fine details, architectural plans, things like that. But have a pretty good idea of layout. We've worked together on this since you approved us moving forward with Confluence as a team. So we're here to get some feedback. So I'm going to turn it over to Matt with Confluence. I'll kind of run the PowerPoint for you, but we'll kind of go through where we're at with design and we'll wait to hear your feedback.
Sounds good. Thank you, everybody. Everybody hear me okay? So I guess I should back up just a little bit after hearing that presentation that we just heard about stakeholders and engagement and all those sort of things. Back in January, we started this process and we went through and we had some engagement. We went through a number of different design alternatives to get us to the point we were at. But now I'm here representing a team that's kind of put together. We have ICE consultants, we have fountain consultants, we've got engineers on the team. We really have pushed this further, kind of tested it a little bit further than we had before. If you remember, we also kind of did some research on precedent facilities. I think we had 15 different parks around the country that we started out studying before we really ever kind of honed in on what we're doing here. That helped us kind of understand scale, how things fit together, found the right consultants, quite honestly, in doing some of that research on who are the right pieces of the puzzle to fit together. So that brought us to where we're at today. So what you're going to see now is just sort of a collection of all those things, an update to what's changed. We can kind of start to document some of the stuff that's there. We now have a more precise look on how the fountain's going to be and some adjustments of what have been made. So we're going to run through that pretty quickly. And then the fun part is at the end, we have brand new pretty images for you that aren't even in your packet that were done by noon today by folks like Caitlin. So just different components to it. So the blue there, the easy one, the ice loop that's there, just to back up a little bit, we did the public engagement piece of that. We had a lot of discussion of the project down in Ames that we've worked on in Ames, project down in Johnston that we've worked on that was sort of a big open ice skating area. The public clearly told us that the loop was the direction they wanted to go. There's a project in Caldwell, Idaho that really kind of based on it that we used. That's kind of a similar scale to this that we thought that was a really good fit. And the public told us that's what we wanted or what they wanted. The water runnel is again activation. So the area number 2 in the top right up there. That was loosely based on a project from Normal, Illinois, that I think that we've seen and used as a precedent project. Very successful piece there. The splash pad, again, is another activation component that we want kids to be part of, and you'll see some updates to that. The site support building, we've kind of worked through that with Studio Melee and right-sized that building, talked about the components that are with it. We've identified some seating locations, the food trucks, that food truck thing we just talked about engagement and finding the right truck in the right place. We've got great spot for that. We got 3 locations that can fit on the south end of the site. And then the columns that are downtown, we kind of continued some general kind of spin-off of that, and then some street improvements that are necessary in the Dropbox relocation. So that's kind of the overview. Now we'll dive into some specific pieces. I think the next one is the streetscape itself. As you can see there, we've kind of modified the main crossing. If you go out the front door here to kind of continue over to that space, it'll be a raised platform. So it's kind of one pedestrian space going all the way across. We've relocated the Dropbox. And then the back end parking along 5th Street, and then some dedicated parking along the north-south street of Clark.
Yeah, and just in your packet too, we kind of talk about the new parking lot on 6th Street and kind of show you how we end up parking wise. We do lose spaces. We do get some better parking here on Clark with the access straight to front of City Hall with the handicap access, things like that. And the Dropbox would be a pull-in spot and back out. So you pull in, drop off, and then back out. It would not be a drive-through Dropbox anymore. As we went through the design, it just felt hard. We would have had to put a median in the middle of the road. So you kind of lose that pedestrian crossing. So that would have made it difficult.
Can I interrupt for a question? How do you want to do this?
I actually prefer to go through the whole presentation, but go ahead and ask your question, then we can keep on moving on.
Oh, okay. I'm just curious about the over the ice area. It kind of looks like there's a fish spatula there, but what are those wires that are those like overhead wires, or what are those?
Those are lights.
Those will be lights.
Overhead lights.
We'll show you.
Okay, good.
You'll see that the 3D renderings will really kind of clearly show what.
Okay, good. All right.
They're catenary lights is what the idea is. So the ice ribbon, I mentioned this a little bit earlier. We went through, we tested a lot of things in this process, I think, as this group can contend to, but it's a natural ice system. We've got a largely removable dasher board system that goes around the outside, and a railing system. It's a continuous loop with what they call a spin-off zone. So the kind of blue circle in the middle down there on the bottom, it would be a large area that, you could get away if you're not the best skater in particular. You can use that space to kind of get your bearings. And then we also talked about the right sizing of this. We want to make sure that it wasn't too big. There's probably the risk of, if you make it too big, it becomes a raceway around the outside. If you make it too straight, it becomes a raceway around the outside. We tried to figure out how to size it and put the angles appropriately. We worked with our ice consultant to kind of figure out what the right size of it was, and we're pretty confident that we've got really what we need there. The one in Caldwell is about 1.3 times bigger than this one. But I think this one kind of fits this site better and kind of tucks in nicely. And I think our ice consultants are very comfortable with the size and scale of it. That's actually the one in Caldwell. And then the two bottom picture, the one on the bottom and the one on the right is Caldwell. And the one in the top left is Maggie Daly in Chicago. Probably not fair to compare it to that one. Little different usage there, but the one in Caldwell is very similar to our space. You can see on the bottom left there, they have festivals and other things in that space, kind of similar to what we're programming here. That one's been very, very successful. And the railing system and some of the other things we've taken from that one have been very successful. The water runnel, again, I mentioned earlier, it starts kind of in the top right of your screen up there. And the idea is the water would kind of come out of that space. It would be a nice 1 to 2 inch flow of water, about a 1 inch or a 1% slope all the way down along that walk. So you could kind of interact and play in that feature. That wouldn't be lifeguards on duty. It's truly you hop in, hop out, and designed that way. And then the boulders you see down there in the bottom closer to the building, the idea of those is you've got some bubblers that come up and out of the water. It's, again, interactive. There's some activators there. And then along with that, we've shown some misters. And then we're going to use some misters and some joint light things to kind of create some interest at night as well as during the day. It should be interactive for kids. They can make it happen. They can make it pop up and down. And then I think at night, there's a couple images here that will show you what it could look like too.
I think I would just add maybe one thing real quick, just so everybody knows. The Runnel is accessible. So if somebody is in a mobility device, they will still be able to access the Runnel, move up and down that. So it's very inclusive design.
And that's one of the modifications we made. I mean, not that the original version wouldn't have been, but the modification of that area to the north of the building kind of included that to make that more inclusive and get folks interactive with that water. I think the next image shows you just a little bit more. I'm stepping ahead here. So the spray area, I joined those two together. I'm sorry. So the spray area I talked about already a little bit. The the mister nozzles that are there, and then this next slide that I'll already talk about. So the idea there of some boulders, that image you see on the right obviously is the fairgrounds, Mike, but my guess is a lot of you have been to that location. But we want to make sure incorporate, so not only there's the runnel, you have the splash pad like the image on the top left up there, water coming up out of the ground, but then also some misters that we can have with light that in different locations we can interact with that and have some sort of interest there at night. The site support building, Studio Melee has worked with us quite a bit on this particular piece, but the idea is there's some skate rental in that space. And as you can see, there's a large canopy that extends off the north side of that. As we looked at the program of this, we wanted to make sure there was some space there in the summer that had some shade to it, but then also some gathering space in the winter that was kind of off to the side where you weren't really kind of in the hustle and bustle. If you want to put on your skates or if you want to get away and have some hot chocolate or whatever it is, we wanted to have that space there. There's 2 restrooms. We had to think about the logistics. You've got fountain facilities. You also have ice facilities. You've got chillers. You've got Zambonis to park, all those sort of things. All those things are accounted for in that building space. And then the art wall, we've actually integrated that art wall into the building space. And you'll see a couple of images here coming up of how we've integrated those. And I think these images actually have been updated as well. We got some images from the architect, these next few after this one. The idea here is it would be sort of a form stained concrete facade. So the image on the top right would look a little bit like wood, but it's actually a concrete product. And then the canopy itself would be a translucent product. So it lets some light through, but still has some shade to it. And I think the images you'll see here on the next few slides will really kind of start to send it home. So that's kind of an image of looking south. So that would be the north edge of the building. So the canopy would extend over in that space. And then the restrooms are kind of behind that screen wall that you see there in that location. And then obviously the art wall that would be along the backside of that. And then just a hint of what the seating materials could be. We're going to show a slide here in a little bit about that. But just a couple different images of what that building could look like. And then that's the view kind of looking from the southwest at the corner. So that would be the Zamboni storage area. And then where that person in the red is standing would be the area where you would give your skate rental. And then the bike actually, on this particular image, would be that band you see is actually the edge of the ice rink in the winter. So site furnishings. So one thing I want to point out on the site furnishings is the main site, if you take the ice area and then extend north to that green kind of egg shape you see to the north there, that's the new home for the art piece that I think we've talked about quite a bit. It used to be kind of on axis with City Hall over to the east further. We wanted to intentionally kind of open up that space a little bit further and give that art piece a better and more prominent home. But we have to work and think through what makes the right scale too. I think you can make the space too big if we don't have the right, in studying all those precedent parks, we had to make sure we had enough open space, but yet you still felt fine there if there's 20 people and you still feel fine there if there's 500 people. So I think we kind of figured out and added that space. And then I think the furnishings and those kind of pieces all accentuate those spaces and make them even better. So if you click to the next slide, these are just some examples. So we do have a couple swinging benches that kind of add some fun to it. We have to think through of skates. If you're putting on skates, how can you sit there? The idea of some movable benches, and then that image in the middle on the top up there, the idea of those 2 spaces, there's 2 plazas kind of up in the top right along the Runnel walk. And the intention of those is they're sort of tucked in spaces. So you've got the main space down there where it's kind of hustle and bustle. There's lots of stuff going on all the time. We also wanted to provide an opportunity to have some seating areas that are a little bit off the path, a little bit more quaint, a little bit more quiet, because some folks don't like to have the hustle and bustle. Some of us are introverted and want to sit back and read a book while the kids are in the fountain or something. That's not a bad thing. That is not a bad thing. But we want to make sure everybody has an opportunity to find a place that they like, I guess is my main point. Lights are a key component to all of this. I think you'll see in the next slide here, we've got a couple lights and some trash receptacles and things like that. They're certainly going to be noticeable in this, but lighting is a key component to all of this. That space needs to read well at night. We know there's going to be lots of events if this is done successfully, which it will be, that we'll have folks there all hours of the night, not all hours, but to a certain point at night. Corey, do you want to take this one?
Sure. So as we showed you in the council action form, this is the current cost estimate. It is over our current budget. So we talked about some options. So we can talk about that at the end. But right now we're showing as is, we are over budget. So that's something you'll have to consider as we go through this. So, but that was some of the costs difference was the water was higher than maybe the concept cost, and the going to the natural ice was obviously a larger cost.
Yeah, there's a recirculation system for the water, which I think we clearly said we were going to go to. And then the natural ice. We did look at synthetic ice at one point, which Johnston's about to open their version of it that's synthetic ice. So we went through a lot of different options of what that cost was, which would have saved us some money. But ultimately, in working with the staff and the folks that deal with ice on a regular basis here, you have excellent staff. They clearly said real ice is the way to go in this particular situation. So now the fun pictures. So I promised you fun images. So the question earlier about the lights, you can see those lights kind of hanging over that space. The idea is they're kind of up high. You would go underneath them. They would be there year round. So it'd be a nice, cool feature in the summer as well as in the winter. And in that one, you can see the image. If you go back just a little bit, one more there. So you see sort of that big green space to the north there. There's a thought of an art piece in the middle. That kind of white squiggly thing that's there would be the art piece. You see on the north side of the building there, those kind of white columns that you see, those would actually be water. Those would be popping up out of the ground, splashing around in that space. And then you see that squiggly line going to the north up there. That's the edge of the water runnel. So that water would be running from north to south along that space and then sort of terminates there next to all those splash fountains. And then that center mound that you see just north of the catenary lights, that would be synthetic turf, sort of green area in the summer where we could see tables and chairs and things moved around. I could see bags being located in that space. I could see giant Jenga, all kinds of things that are just fun and interactive in that space. And that synthetic turf product would make it more durable. So in the winter, yeah, okay, it snows, changes a little bit. But the idea of it's still active and can do things in that space, we think we really like. And there's that hill I mentioned earlier. So that synthetic turf in front of you. You see the lights a little bit better in this picture to the south. And then off to the left there, those white columns, again, those would be your splash fountains that come up and down. Kind of shows the building in context a little bit of that space. And then that dark band you see going around there, that's where the bumper boards, what are they called? Dasher boards. The word dasher just escaped me for a second. The dasher boards will be placed on those dark bands. There you go. And then the view from the south looking north. So that's kind of from just to the left of the stage area that's there. You see that art sculpture in the back left there. You kind of see how lighting really impacts the space. Nice space that can be used for a number of different events. The variety of things that can happen in this space, we really like that. You've got a number of wonderful spaces in town, but this certainly is a different one. We talked about the food truck locations that can supplement this, but really the opportunities that can happen in this space are endless. And I think this is the last one. So we could end with the little 10-year-old figure skater there telling us goodbye. And with that, we're happy to answer any questions you have.
If you have questions for staff or Matt and Confluence, be happy to answer.
When do we start? No, it's great. I love it.
So we had a question this week about bike parking. And so if people access this by bikes, where would you contemplate bike parking?
We have it along the south side, so that's along 5th Street. There's 2 separate areas along 5th Street where we have dedicated bike parking.
Okay.
You go back to the plan. Any of them should work.
Yeah.
So there's 2 separate areas on the south side there, just north of those parking stalls. I don't know if you can highlight those, Corey. There's two little planter areas. The intent is there's bike parking tucked into that space. And then the same thing, there's a tree cover in it in that image, but there's a similar one on that side.
Okay.
So yeah. Yeah, it's quite a few. It's pretty big.
Would Keith, and this is probably getting ahead of us a little bit, would there be hours that this park would be open?
If all of our parks are open from 6 a.m. to 10:30 p.m. So if we want to follow that same rule, that would be the hours.
Okay. Great. Thanks.
So the amount of green space seems small to me. And I don't know whether that's just the renderings, because when you populate these, as you did in the later ones, it doesn't look like there's that much green space. There are lots of trees. How much is there? Can you give me a sense of that?
No, I think that's a fair discussion. I mean, I think that this space in particular it's intended to be kind of the jack of all trade spaces, as a plaza space is. I think Ames in general has a lot of green space. I think this one, we added that space to the north because I think we'd agreed with you. We could use a little bit more space. But at the same time, it's that balance of having that flexibility that you can have all sorts of events on and still feel like it's a space. I think the use of trees and the use of some berms and things like that, we could add more green space. But I think making the space and adding a little bit of contour, if you look out there today, it's a flat parking lot. In order to create the space and make it more lively, I think you create those spaces by adding in some contour to it. I think you gain more from adding that and creating the special spaces than you do if you just left it all open and be a large green space. So I think it's a little bit of a trade-off. I completely understand your question. And you're right, if you just look at it on context, if you look at grass, there isn't that much. But I think there's other opportunities in Ames where you can get that, where this is a different space, where I think what we've got programmed as a group here, we've talked through and kind of tried to right-size the right elements for it. But I understand your point.
Well, my main question really goes back to the fact that as we have moved through this pandemic, people have looked for spaces where they don't have to be right next to other people.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like green space is more flexible than benches. And so that's really where the question was coming from, that, are people changing the way they interact with the space or not?
Yeah, I guess, sure. The answer is yes, they are. I think one of the things we talked about just in the furniture itself, we wanted to make sure we had furniture that's movable. And then, we talked about those two areas to the northwest or northeast up there. Those are separate areas, again, for that to allow you to separate a little bit. But the furniture in particular, to allow people to gather in very small groups they're familiar with. I think the ability to have that and have that furniture that can be moved, obviously is a maintenance thing. We got to make sure it's the right furniture for the group. But at the same time, I think it allows that flexibility to be spread out. But I don't know that has to be on green space. I think a plaza space in general can certainly provide that opportunity, whether it's green grass, whether it's synthetic grass, or whether it's hard surface, you can still have that same opportunity.
Well, as far as grass or synthetic, I'm not all that concerned about that.
Mm-hmm.
I would be concerned if we were adding more hard surface, because I'd really like to see us having more permeable space and
Mm-hmm.
water management opportunities that don't rely on the concrete or pavers or whatever we're doing on the rest of it.
Yep, I don't disagree with that either. The one thing we do have to worry about on this one is since it's ice, we've got lots of pipes and lots of things going under the system to keep it chilled that we do have to worry about. So we do have to have a certain amount of that anyway. And then one thing on the synthetic turf aspect is we don't have to pipe it. It actually goes right through the turf. So we can do a little bit of that sort of stuff with that synthetic turf in the middle. So we can accomplish a little bit of that in the process too.
Great.
Can you explain what the width of the ribbon is?
14 feet.
How's that compare to some of the images that you had?
The one in Caldwell is 20. That's the one we used as our main precedent was 20 feet. And again, in working with our ice consultants, we kind of talked about right sizing this and thinking about the speed and the ability of the skaters. And they were more than comfortable with the 14-foot dimension.
So that would accommodate, well, if I'm skating, accommodate one person because I'd be laying flat on my back. But if you
I would be alongside of you, so you better count two.
Yeah. Okay. That's go ahead. I got quite a few questions, and the point is I'm really excited about the project, and it's really dynamic. But I like council first, see any questions they have too. So,
could you explain a little bit more what the stage is going to look like or be like?
It's intended to be sort of a secondary feature. There'll be a canopy over the top of it. We haven't actually officially. We took the canopy. Whoop. There's a canopy on the rendering that's not supposed to be there. That's what I meant to say. It's just a raised area that could be used as sort of a special space, but it's not intended to be that. That's not the main focus of the space.
other questions?
I have some questions.
Go ahead, Dan.
Can you remind me, I'm sorry if we've done this already, why the back end parking on 5th Street?
That came out in terms of it was a chance to pilot doing back end angled parking without having to negatively impact anybody else. And it also fed into the idea that if I'm just going to flow into the park, I can just get out of the back of my vehicle, unload whatever I have, and just be in the park. So it's considered a safer version of angled parking, and this seemed like the best place to try that, and that's why we're doing it.
Okay. just looking at some of the seating options I saw, I noticed a number of them don't have any backs. And as I age, I like seats with backs on them. So just wanted to put that out there, and I'm probably not alone. Also, I know you'll be limited by products with respect to where umbrellas go and whether the solar covers are. But still, there are a lot of sort of semi-permanent umbrella-like things around town that are always in the wrong spot, right? The sun is just not covered by, when you sit in the chair, you're in the sun, and there's an umbrella that's there too. So I would ask you to do whatever you can in order to make that match up well. I do have a question. One of the slides showed the summertime view of the central circle, and it looked like it had a nice texture there. I found that really appealing. Is that part of the design?
Yeah, we hope to have some sort of design in that space. We haven't finalized exactly what that material is, but we hope to have something.
Some sort of cover then that wouldn't just be like a smooth looking concrete. It's this.
Yes, we hope to have something in that space.
Nice. Thank you.
Other questions?
Actually, I have one more because of David's question about the seating.
Yep.
Are we looking at those options that are like what we have out at Tedesco, which allow for solar charging and sitting there with laptops that can be plugged in? Or are we just looking at tables with an umbrella over them?
We actually have discussed that and trying to find if we can fit it into the budget with the overall design. We have talked about adding some solar charging stations, whether it's underneath the canopy, whether it's next to some of the benches and so on. So we have discussed that.
Yeah, I like that idea a lot. I was going to ask that same question. So I think, yeah.
Yeah, and we've talked to the engineering too about the option to maybe add that in the future with some of the conduits and things, the columns that we run throughout that we could come back and add. Some of the benches, if you did the plug-in benches, you're going to have to leave the bench. It's not as movable. The solar probably gives us a little bit more options. So those are things we have discussed.
I've seen a couple of public ice arenas where they had music be able to pipe in. Is that an option here?
Yes. Yep. We've actually have looked at adding in the skate rental area. We would have a stereo system or the opportunity to put something in there. And then we would add some speakers to the outside. So we do have in the budget some money set aside for FF&E, and we have included some money in that for a sound system, whether it's to play music or to make announcements, whatever that might be.
What's FF&E?
Yeah, I was just going to say, what was that acronym?
What does FF&E mean?
Oh, furniture, fixtures, and equipment.
Thank you. Thank you.
Not concrete.
Yeah, and so we talked about that. Those would be, we're looking at options, but those would not be bid as part of the project. We'd do those separately.
Sure.
So when it comes back to you, you won't see benches and things like that listed for the actual
With the
bid.
construction project.
And I think your question about the back benches is we're going to have both. Part of it is if you're putting on skates, you want to have the flexibility of sitting on either side of it. So having the right mixture, I appreciate your thought of having backs, but it will be some sort of mixture where some of them will, some of them won't.
That sounds right. One other question occurred to me, and that's what you've described the little stage area is not really, there's really not much to it, right? It's a secondary area. But is that something that could be enhanced in the future if we wanted to create sort of a more acoustically projecting space?
I'll take it. The short answer is yes. I mean, I think we can plan it that way. I think the one thing we heard in the process of when we had our engagement process is there's a lot of other venues that do that now. We want to make sure and not take away from those. This venue is sort of be something that supplements that a little bit. It may be a small, maybe someone with a guitar plays at night, but it's not a true music venue like some of the other ones you have that are really quite close. So we're really sensitive to making sure that those are still successful as well.
Thanks.
Other questions?
You go.
What's that?
I said, you go.
Now we're in trouble.
Well, obviously having been in the business for 30 years of knowing that design development or schematic design development is this is a time that we need to ask questions and get these things in front of you, because
Please do.
the next step is you're going to do an awful lot of work and you don't want to start and go back and unwind it. So,
Agreed.
so, the building, let's start with the building. Initially we had, I think, a view to the west with the canopy. This is the previous one that you had done, I think.
Okay.
And now we're looking north. I'm just wondering about the vision of the activity that's going to be going on, which is going to be the plaza and the skating. What thoughts do you have on that, or what did Studio mainly say about that? Because I think you're going to be looking primarily at landscaping, and the wintertime is primarily going to be facing the north, where the winds, are coming from. And so I was just curious, help council understand. And I understand, first of all, you guys did a great job on this, so I'm not picking it apart. It's just more or less, now it's time to ask the questions. Help us understand, you got limited space to work with, but what was your thought process? And did you consider an orientation that was both either or north and west to try and capture some more areas for people to sit under some protection?
Clear is one of the first things that we talked about. I think we looked at the south. The west just seemed a little too shallow to really accomplish our goals once you put in the ice rink. So we were looking at north or south primarily. And I think at the end of the day, I know we've had both versions. We decided as the design evolved, the center of the plaza where the seating is with the fountain and the runnel was really the activity center for most of the year. And then it did have that ability to still look towards the skating rink in the winter. So we thought we had accomplished the best we could with the space. And the shade was another factor to be able to have that in the summer versus if it was on the south side, it was never going to be shaded. In the west, it probably wasn't either. So those are some of the factors that we had on as staff in picking that.
And then the one other thing I'll add is just in the winter, the functionality sometimes drives things. So the Zamboni coming in and out was another one that we had a lot of discussion of how does then Zamboni enter and do its thing and go back out without interacting with the folks. So the Zamboni really kind of claims the south end of it. And then all the people are on the north end of it. So you kind of flow through, you get your skates at the window that you can see there. You go to the north end, you put your skates on, hang out in that space, and then enter the ice rink on that side. Collectively, I think we liked the flow of how that all worked. And so we adjusted and that became the main space. And I need to echo that it's a year-round thing. So, that north side in the summer being adjacent to the runnel, adjacent to the splash pad, we sort of all collectively, pushed ourselves in that direction. And I think we really like the result of it.
I just want to clear one thing. So we're talking about Zamboni. Don't think that we're going to have a full-size Zamboni pulling out of that garage. It's going to be more so a tractor with an ice resurfacer attachment on the back of it that will take care of the ice. So just so everybody doesn't get their hopes up that they're going to be able to come down and see the Zamboni out there.
An electric one, right?
There's one other feature to the building I don't think we hit on. The public restrooms are obviously in the building. They're on the north side of the building as well. So you have the seating and the restrooms all kind of focused in where we think the water activity and this basically the summer engagement is for the most part. And that is different than the original concept.
And I would also add is that those two restrooms, they will be gender neutral, and they are modeled after the new restrooms at Innis Grove. So they will have adult changing tables, and like I said, be gender neutral.
So you said the canopy was translucent. What kind of material are they talking about using for that?
I don't think we've actually picked them. I mean, the images that we saw today were kind of the first look at that. The way it is right now, it's translucent. I don't know the material yet.
Okay. The reason I asked is that Cal Wall is one product, which is an insulated, fiberglass panel, which is beautiful when it's put on. But after about 8 to 10 years, the fiberglass starts shredding essentially, and it becomes a real maintenance headache. And so I think it'd be important to be choosing products that are going to really be long lived, and not have to, the future council have to go ahead and pay someone to come in and resurface all those panels. I mean, it's a problem on a lot of skylights,
Yep.
And does that continue all the way across the building, or is there actually a break? Different type of roof material going to be used?
This area here is the translucent overhang, and then the rest is just metal roof.
Yeah, there's a break.
Yeah, there's a little, you gotta look closely.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think with the building, it's very much designed to have minimal maintenance. And I mean, the materiality is essentially concrete. I mean, the siding material is concrete that's stained. There's not natural wood products here. There's not things that, and that's part of the discussion points. Again, do we have the warmth of the building? What can we do with, even though our goal is to minimize maintenance? And this is where we're at in terms of compromise of materials and maintenance. So definitely take a good look at that and make sure you're comfortable with it, because concrete walls aren't going to change once they're poured.
Well, I think it's a really good product choice, honestly. I like the idea it was stained concrete that kind of gave some design variability to it, but it's still going to be, a good product. So, on the water runnel, when we went through that splash pad conversation, or council did, you talked about different types of filtration systems. Has that been talked about on this one also? Or are you going to just go with a direct one use and then it's going to go down the storm drain, or is it going to be purified, or how's it going to work?
No, based on the conversation we've had with council in the past, and what we were doing out at Daly Park with the recirculation system, that will be the same thing here. It will be a recirculation system. The runnel and the splash or the spray pad will all be one system. That water will be recirculated. There will be a sand filter. There will also be an ultraviolet disinfection, which will take care of. Now I'm drawing a blank on one of the waterborne illnesses that is
E. coli?
is a problem. Yes, well that's one of them, but it will be in there, and so it will be recirculation. It will reduce water consumption, tremendously over what we would if we just did the flow through.
And is that equipment in the building?
Yes. There is a 4,000 gallon water tank would be underground, kind of right at the end of the runnel, but all the other equipment would be in the building, as well as the ice skid for making the ice. That would be in the building as well.
The drop box, drive in, drop off, or everyone's used to, including me, driving up, throwing in an envelope, and then taking off. How has staff thought through that in terms of customer satisfaction, getting out of the car to get their bill dropped into a box? Or is that something that the box is going to be right adjacent to, so you can pull in and drop it off?
Right adjacent. So you would still drop it off through. Okay. So you'd roll down your window, drop it off, but you'd have to back out.
Okay.
We just talked through it with the median and things to get that kind of nice pedestrian access from City Hall to it. Really, there was no good way to do it. You would have had to put the drop box in the middle.
I think your first concept showed a median. I think that was a question that we even had in our minds, was that's going to really interrupt the flow and stuff. So.
Yeah, so this was a compromise, but we're hoping, more people do online bill pay, things like that we're probably not seeing the use of it like we used to.
So we talked a lot about the ribbon that's 14 feet wide. I think it's a really cool idea. I think the key is we don't want to build something that won't work. But people just don't want to skate on it because it's just too crowded. So you said that's 1.3. It's that one in Caldwell is 30% larger, essentially. That's right. So what experience does your consultant have doing ice ribbons like this? And are they coming from a experience of, yes, we know that this is a really good size based on population, the number of people, because we're investing an awful lot of money, first of all, in building it, designing it, building it, and then operating it. So can you comment on that?
I guess I can't tell you exact numbers. I mean, we hired them for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
They were recommended through all the other folks that have worked within the ice arenas. They have a vast experience in this. I don't think they did the one in Caldwell, but again, going through that process and looking at how successful that one is, can't really compare ourselves to Maggie Daly. Those are the two probably most well-known ones.
Mm-hmm.
But communities of your size, they're very successful. I fully believe this is the right thing for this location, and I know they do as well. And I can get you more information on their background, but they're fully invested in getting this done.
Well, I firmly believe in hiring good consultants, and if these people say that this is really going to be successful, I think that's what we're looking for. It's just more or less, again, we just don't want to have this built and people just say, geez, that's just so small. Why do I want to skate on that, essentially? So.
And I think just understanding the kind of size and scale of it, if you're looking at the parking lot that's over there, this is a little more than half the length of that parking lot. The one in Johnston, I did a comparison right before this. It's a very similar length. It's about 20 feet shorter, but we're actually a little bit wider than that one. That one's all open, but if you think about just if you were skating around the outside of that one, that would give you kind of a good context. If you want to go down and see that one, that's a very good comparison to this space as well.
Well, I just looked online, and I think it's a Brenton skate rink in Des Moines is 60 by 120, which is a lot smaller than a hockey. And I'm not looking for a hockey rink here. I'm not looking for a figure skating rink. I'm just trying to get some kind of idea of scale, who's going to be able to use it, because obviously you have to go one direction, and you have enough room for people who are faster and also slower, and people who are going to be laying on the ice like me.
Right.
So
I think that's why we added, one of those original ones didn't have that little circle in the middle on the south end. I think that's one of the things that as a group we talked about. We added that from the original plan for that reason alone. I think we talked about there's folks like me that aren't very good at it that would come be in that space trying to get my bearing.
So we're on the ice. Keith, talk about the dasher boards. They got to be installed in the wintertime. You got to pull them out in the summertime. How are you going to get them installed? Is there sleeves in the ground? Are you going to bolt them? And then where are you going to store them? Can you talk us through that in terms of all the staff time and maintenance and how it's going to look after 4 or 5 years?
Right. So I'll let Matt just talk a little bit about how they will be installed. But as far as storage, we did have conversation about storing them on site, and that building would have had to been super huge. So we didn't go that route. We feel taking it, we'll probably wind up putting them on pallets or in boxes. We do that already with our dasher boards for the 2 ice rinks that we do down at South River Valley. So we have boxes. We put the rails, in this case, the dasher boards in those, put them on a truck, and then we would store them in one of our facilities. Might be the Moore Memorial barn. It could be out at Ada Hayden. It could be at one of our facilities down on 13th Street. So we did talk about that. We did talk about, is there an opportunity to leave, some of them permanently? And we will experiment with that. There is an option kind of along that west berm. Maybe that railing stays, during the summertime. But it will still be able to be removed. And if we feel that some could stay, we may give that a try. But I can't remember exactly, Matt, are they sleeves or they just get bolted down?
The current plan right now, there's a number of ways to do it. We haven't actually finalized it yet. But the one in Caldwell is, again, using the example there of those are sleeves that fit into the ground, and then there's plugs that go in for the summer. So certainly you'll see lots of details going forward of how that's done.
Right.
And then ultimately we have to flood it, right? So making sure that those will hold water and where it drains and all that sort of stuff. We have to figure out all that stuff going forward.
Yeah, the devil's going to be in the detail on that.
Absolutely.
Especially when you got all those curved rails and trying to get them to be watertight and just envisioning in our environment with all the stuff that can get in the plugs and having to get it'll work beautifully when you get in the first time.
Right.
But I'm thinking 5 or 10 years on the road when you're basically there with a screwdriver trying to get the sand out of the out of the plug and get the thing put in there. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just trying to think through what are you going to do to try to make sure to make it easy for staff, so they're not just cursing this in 5 years.
Yeah, and we've had a lot of discussion, and back to the point of, can we keep some of these railings permanent? And we went back and forth, and really we like the fact that it's all open space in the summer. And staff went back and forth of, is it really worth that effort? And everybody, shook their head and said, yes, we do. To have that space in the summer, to make it as versatile as we can possibly make it, we're willing to do that extra work.
And one thing, too, Mayor, I would say that, Matt mentioned about the ICE consultant. As staff, we've been really impressed, with the knowledge and the expertise that they have. In fact, we have called them separate from this project. We have called them and had conversations about issues at the ice arena. And staff has really found them to be incredibly intelligent and So we're really comfortable with them giving us a final product that is going to last for a long time.
So we'll own the skates and we'll sharpen the skates. Is that right? Or
Yeah, so we'll have skates, and we have talked about getting a smaller skate sharpening machine that would be in there. And there's some that are pretty much it doesn't take a lot of knowledge. You put the skate in there, there's only one way, and then it kind of sharpens almost on its own. So we have talked about that. And the one thing I'll just mention with hours, we haven't finalized things, but we're not looking at renting skates 12 hours a day because we'll have to staff it. So generally during the week, we'd probably have some time in the evening, 5 to 7, 6 to 8, something along those lines. Maybe on the weekends, we would have maybe something from noon to 5. We haven't figured that all out. But that would be something that we would do. One thing I was going to mention with Tim when he talked about the sound system, actually, Craig Kaufman, who's our auditorium, bandshell, and community center manager, he's been looking at this. And one of the things that he's been looking at is potential if we do something with a tablet that we could actually do sound remotely. So if we wanted to have music playing there during the daytime. If people are skating, we could do that remotely and wouldn't necessarily have to have a staff person.
But you understand people can bring their own skates. That's the advantage of having the real ice. So
Yep.
the serious skaters you want to accommodate, they'll have their own skates. So
Yep.
you don't have to rent ours.
And we haven't talked with customer service. We have tossed out the idea of maybe having some skates at customer service or at the community center, because we are there during the daytime. And if somebody wanted to come and skate from 8 to 5, maybe we could do some smaller skate rentals in those areas as well. We haven't worked out all the details, but those are things that we're talking about to be more customer friendly if people don't have their own skates.
so we have a nice concrete slab in the summertime. I'm just trying to envision what's going to be attractive about that when it's hot and we don't have much shade. And I know you've done one of the reasons you guys were picked, but you have a lot of experience doing outdoor gathering spaces. So talk council through that in terms of, we don't want to build something that people just say, well, I can see where all the shade, trees and other places and underneath the building are very attractive. And I appreciate the fact that you got some flexibility there. But what would cause people to want to gather there in the middle of a concrete slab?
I think it's a balance, right, of having enough spaces in the shade to start with. And then I think we mentioned the umbrellas earlier of, there's some variety there of being able to move things back and forth, pull chairs back and forth. And then some of the activity that's out there, you've got ping pong or bags or those kind of things anyway. You're not going to want shade areas over those anyway. So I think to me, it's having that right balance. But you have to have some space open in the middle there that's going to be active and going to have space that's not going to have shade over it. But I think it's a really good balance of areas that can have it and areas that don't. Areas that are wide open, I think we do need to provide a few umbrellas and things like that that do activate that space, but they can also be moved if there's a small concert or something that happens on that south end down there.
So Keith, are we going to have like the bags or the games out there, or you're thinking people will just bring them themselves? Is that what you're?
Well, they could, but there are some concrete, some more sturdy types of bag boards. So we have talked about moving those in the summertime.
Okay.
Concrete or something more stable, ping pong table. We have talked about even, I don't know if you've seen some of the giant chess boards or checker boards, doing some of those types of things where you put the pieces out during the daytime, you put them away at night. So those are some things also that we're looking at, just to add some other types of activity there in the summertime.
I love the idea of the lights. So do birds. And I know this isn't the first place this has been done. How do they control birds from wanting to perch on there and become a nuisance?
To be honest, on the places we've put those type lights, I think they move enough that the birds haven't been a problem. I think if you string them too tight and that they're really, really tight, that they're straight across, that's when the problem happens. I think if you leave a little bit of flex in them so that the wind moves them enough, the birds actually don't sit on them near as much. We've had pretty good success on our projects using that. Sounds simple, but it really has been successful.
Yeah, well, I think the other thing is, I think it does really help create a sense of place. It creates an artificial sense of a roof.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I'm not saying take it out. I was just curious. I want to have you sitting there and have, anyway.
That question about the lights actually kind of put paid to my idea, which was, why don't we string some cloth up there as a kind of pergola effect for shade? But birds, well, bad news, I guess.
And then on the landscaping, is that going to be irrigated, like the plantings as well as the lawn? So we really,
Yes.
the other thing is care and maintenance. I mean, this is really, it's very, very handsome. I think you really hit on all cylinders. It's also going to require a lot of attention, weeding, fertilizing, maintenance. So that's something that's already you figured in terms of staffing, and it's a higher level than just mowing lawn. So
Yes, yeah, we haven't figured out exactly how we're going to do it, but it has been part of the conversation. And the areas all are irrigated as well.
And then a couple more questions on our furniture, on the FF&E. On the furniture, I like the idea of things being moved around. I also don't like it.
Yep.
How do you handle vandalism, maintenance, theft, and not having something so heavy that's very hard to throw in the back of your truck or your, at 3:00 in the morning, but that's someone who's has difficulty moving something that's bulky. What are other people doing? How's that work?
Yeah. So this is I've been harping on maintenance and everything throughout this whole design. And when we got to the tables and the benches, Matt said, "Oh, we got this really nice table and bench combo thing, really heavy, all one piece. People can't move it." And we will have some of those, but I think with this design, and this is what kind of floored Matt a little bit, I said, I think we need more movable tables and chairs so people have the flexibility that if they want to slide a table together because they have a larger group or they want to move some chairs around, they need that flexibility. We will have a security system in this area as well. And we are hoping the fact that with the lighting and the fact that it's right across from the police station, that will be a little bit of a deterrent for vandalism and so on. So those are some of the things. I think we got to have a little give and take. We can't make everything just bolted down to the concrete so nobody can ever move it, and you lose some of that flexibility. So kind of like Matt said, there's a combination of things that we got to give people some opportunity to move things around and be a little bit more flexible as to how they're going to use the space.
It's like the dasher boards in the summertime. Some furniture will have to be hauled away then in the wintertime, or it's all going to stay on site, or
some of them may, but we will still need some seating there. People will need to sit down and get their skates on and change skates and so on. So it really depends. Some of it will be kind of just an experimentation, what's needed, what's not needed, and we may be able to store some of the things, in the storage areas, but we may have to move some of them off-site.
And hard to believe, but my last question, budget and alternates. Are you going to be building in some ad alternates for some cost protection or measures? And how do you feel, what's your comfort level in terms of budget right now, given the fact that we have building materials all over the place?
Right.
It's very, very hard to be doing budgets.
You want me to handle that one? Sure. Okay. You're right. Budget right now is all over the place. It's up and down. Obviously, we have experts in the fields that are trying to put that in there. The cost estimate you have in front of us is the most recent one with the information that we have. We just recently went through the process with our water folks to try to get that right sized. The ice folks went and just put their most recent number to it. Still, if I sat here and told you I was super comfortable with it, I told you I'd be lying, but I don't know where it's headed. But right now, I think it's the best guess of where everybody's at with it. We have all the right people in the right places to give you that number.
Is there anything that you could see that, I don't want to cut anything out, but you could have that would be an ad alternate that you would say would be, so council, we don't want to take bids and have to go ahead and reject the bids because they're over.
Sure. And we can talk about those things. There's some minor things we've already talked about of, the spray fountains have lights components to them. In a perfect world, I'd love to have lights that could change and make it amazing, but that's $3,000 extra per fountain, things like that I think we can easily build into it. But there's probably other things, we could find a bigger component, maybe the catenary lights above it could be there's things like that we will look for to protect ourselves. You've been around long enough to know that you need to do those things, but have we identified them all yet? The answer is no.
Very good.
I do have one more question about the translucent canopy. Do we have experience in this climate that tells us that actually provides adequate shade in the summer?
I would have to yield to my architect friends to answer that question. I personally don't, but I can get Studio Melee to answer that question for you. That's a good question.
I'm just wondering are the advantages, I'm having a hard time understanding what the advantages are other than it kind of sounds and looks cool. But do we really get an improvement in winter because it's translucent? Is that something that we're looking for?
No, I think when we originally talked, the concept showed more of a pergola style design. I think Studio Melee kind of took that and said, well, if they did a translucent panel, you could kind of get a little bit more shade protection. Now you're out of the rain. You're out of the snow.
That's the main thing. You're out of the rain and you're out of the snow, and it still gives you a similar effect with the light on top of it. I'm not an expert in that material, but I think the intention is it does give you a covered space where the more pergola style would have just been open grid, kind of like the south end of it, the way that's shown. That's how it was originally shown. And I think they wanted to take it to the next level to give a little bit more protection, but yet still let some light through.
Well, I guess I hope that there's a way for us to sort of tackle this problem eventually, because the idea of coming into a greenhouse in the summer is unappealing. And I don't know if that's what this is or not, but keep an eye on it somehow.
At some point we have to defer to the designers.
Right.
That's why we hired Confluence.
Right.
I have one final question, nothing about the design, but about parking. So if I was First National, I'd be really nervous that people would just park in that parking lot and come over and use the plaza. We had conversations with them. So
we haven't. I don't think we've had specific. They definitely know about the project and what's going to happen.
We shared we were talking. They're doing some parking lot changes probably, and we shared the design with them last week. They didn't give us any feedback specifically about it earlier. Back in February, they just cared about reserve parking being replaced, which is happening on 6th Street. We didn't really talk about policing or their concerns about policing their own parking.
it just may be a topic to talk about, because I would be nervous if I was First National about that, but that's all.
Is there actually no drive-through driveway anymore for First National?
There is. It's just hidden in this view. Yeah, so
It's definitely still there.
yeah, I don't think it shows.
Yeah, you can see it there.
On the site plan, it's there. On the rendering, I don't think it shows through.
Yeah, so they'd still have their drive-through, just right, kind of back behind the building.
So what's the schedule in terms of doing the parking lot? I mean, my understanding was parking lots got to be done first across the street, and then you break ground over here. And so certainly, I'm sure as Matt would attest, timing is everything in terms of when you can start a project. And there's probably certain times of the year you want to be doing work on landscaping and sodding and et cetera, et cetera. Have you talked about that in terms of, obviously we're not going to break ground probably till the spring on the parking lot across the street.
Yeah, so we'll bring the parking lot plans to you next month to go out for bid. And we have substantial completion, so the parking lot open by June 1st. So that means we could start this project in June. So we'll bid. We're hoping to accept bids in February on this.
On this project or on the parking lot parking?
Award in February. We'll award the parking lot before that. So the parking lot will start early spring and has to be open by June 1st. They'll be able to finish landscaping, things like that But as long as we can park people, then we can start.
Also, then you want to, that's great. You want to bid this job in February?
Yeah, we gotta go.
Yeah, so that was right. The reminder, the schedule is you're going to approve plan and specs before the end of the year, so it can be out for bid.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's for 4 or 5 weeks, but we want the bids back before you approve the budget.
So the reason we're here tonight, we wanted to show you this as a concept to get your approval. But we're finding out it's over budget by about $450,000. You can either tell us to cut back, tell the designer to cut back, or I've recommended some way we can find money to complete the project with all the amenities you see here that hopefully has excited you tonight. So I would recommend, I wanted to show you before you tell them to go ahead and do this, how we can possibly find it. I will come back with you in December, early December, and show you how I'm going to recommend to use all of the Recovery Act money. But I'm giving you a hint that that's probably one part of it. 450,000 out of the $14 million we've been designated would probably come out of this, and we can do the project. So if you don't want us to cut back anything, if you like what you see, then we can unleash the design development then, right?
Do you want a motion or?
I think that'd be appropriate if you wanted to proceed as.
Any other questions?
Concepts.
Comments?
I would move that we proceed with the downtown plaza as presented in the staff report.
Second.
Moved in second. Any discussion? Those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Looks really
You break ground next week? All right, moving on to item 23, resolution approving renaming of Squaw Creek Park to Iowa Creek Park. Keith?
Yeah, and just with the renaming of Squaw Creek Park, not going to go into a whole lot of detail. All the information is in the council action form. And Gloria, with pulling the item off of consent earlier, kind of said this is an important thing. We did get a number of different ideas, but staff's recommendation to the Parks and Recreation Commission was to go with Iowa Creek Park, and Commission, Parks and Recreation Commission, that was their recommendation for City Council as well, was to go with Iowa Creek Park. So if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer.
Questions? Right. I'll open up public input. Anyone want to address council on this item? Seeing none, close public input. Is there a motion?
Move alternative one.
Second.
Which is?
Rename Squaw Creek to Iowa Creek Park.
Thank you. Roll call.
Aye.
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 Thank you. And then item 24, a resolution approving allocation of council contingency funds for community garden development. Keith?
Yeah, we've had multiple conversations with council regarding the community gardens. We're ready to move forward. We mentioned the last time we were here is that there was no funding identified. So we're coming back asking city council to allocate $22,000 some odd dollars out of council contingency for this purpose so we can move forward.
Questions?
Great project.
Entertain motion.
Move alternative one.
Second.
Okay. Roll call.
Aye.
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 Thank you.
All right, thank
Thanks,
you.
Keith.
Have a great
Okay.
night.
Moving on to item 25, review a draft request for proposal for small lot industrial development. Justin?
All right. Thank you. Good evening. Before you tonight, we have a draft solicit actually for a developer for a small lot industrial development to involve tax increment financing. So just a bit of background, we came to you earlier this year, obviously with some information on our inventory of smaller industrial lots. And as a result of that, you did direct us to draft an RFP to send out to developers to solicit proposals. So we are bringing you that draft tonight. I'll go over just a few things quick. This particular draft kind of structured and modeled similar to probably the most recent similar type of RFP we did. It's been since the 1990s. We did it along Bell Avenue, out along I-35, just west of I-35. And that area has almost filled in. So as a result, some things in this will sort of mirror that style as far as what's worked. There are a few things, though, that are a bit different. We do propose in there to the potential developers a schedule for speculative buildings in the park that does stick to an 18-month time frame, regardless of whether lots are sold or not. So we have a pretty regular building construction timeline that also ensures a return on investment. Additionally, we have obviously pointed out the minimum valuation for spec buildings is now higher, obviously, than it was in 2008, which was the final edition of the Bell Avenue subdivision. So, and that's again intended to reflect current building values so that you can ensure a current return, an accurate return on your investment. So we also have proposed a minimum assessment on the value of land. In previous development agreements, we have restricted that generally to lots that are 1.5 acres or larger. In this, we are also calling for a minimum assessment on lots below 1.5 acres. So we would look for a proposal from anyone who submits on that so that we can bring it to you and have you review it. So with that, that's the general overview of it. We've got it attached in the report. I can go ahead and answer any questions you might have at this time on it. So,
Thanks, Justin. Questions, comments? None? All right, I'll open up public input. Is there anyone that wants to address council on this item?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. It's nice to see your smiling faces in person. It's been a while since I've addressed you. So good evening, Chuck Winkleblack, Hunziker Companies, 105 South 16th Street. Just a question on if you approve the RFP tonight, then does that mean that you'll only take submissions that are consistent with every line item that's in the RFP?
So the way this, so you want me to answer that?
You anything else you want to comment on?
Well, I guess if we're going to be able to talk about some of these things, then there's no sense going through the concerns that I have. Or if you're just going to say, no, if not everything meets this, then I'd like to have that discussion, I guess. So, and it's not about corrugated metal. We're not going to go there tonight, Gloria.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Kelly.
So the way I kind of envision this is you have the section 3, which are the mandatory submittal components. So those are not negotiable, but those are just basically application requirements. And then what we tried to do is make it very clear to whoever wants to propose on this what the city's likely interests are in this in terms of repayment and schedule for speculative buildings and things of that nature. So section 4 is really, it ties into some of the submittal requirements because as a proposer, you have to propose to us what is your project, what are you proposing for speculative buildings? And what we've highlighted, so some of the things that Justin touched upon, we've listed those as developer responsibilities around the speculative buildings, meaning you need to produce speculative buildings. If you don't, we don't really see you as a qualified responder to this. The way we listed that was we're preferred requirements. So the idea was that this is really what we think we want. If there's some other element that's slightly different or somewhat different, we can still review that proposal and we'll have to evaluate it and bring it back to council and say, this is what we think we wanted. This is what we got. Is this what you want to proceed with? So for us, section 3 are the mandatory submittals. Section 4 really clearly, we think, tells you what we expect or hope for out of the project at the same time. And then the scoring criteria, they're not weighted, they're not quantified for you tonight, but it's giving you, again, that sense of this is what the information is that we're going to bring back to you so you can decide if you want to award or go into negotiations on a development agreement for the project. So I think that answers, for the most part, how we look at that. We will take a proposal, but if it's considered non-responsive, we're not going to spend a lot of time evaluating it and score it or do that kind of an evaluation.
Okay. Well, with some of the minimum land assessments and some of that type of stuff. So with what you're talking about there, does that mean we won't have like plat values or some of those type of things that are common in the way because otherwise, we could have, if everything goes to industrial land value from the day it's final platted, then we could have $150,000 or more of ongoing tax liability if everything's starting out at a full value and you're capping the land of what we can sell the things for. So we could be upside down pretty easily. If you're saying, well, you're only going to be able to sell it for this, and if you don't sell it, the last park, again, we had the recession of 2008 and 2007, 8, 9, whatever you want to call it. And then we had the pandemic. So it's been 14 years getting done with what we did, but now we have momentum. Some of these things are beyond our control, but if what we're looking at doing could have a marketable value of $4 to $5 million of bare land value, all of a sudden that times $30 per thousand, round numbers, we could be, and then you're saying, well, we want to keep the prices low. So, but if we're paying $150,000 plus our carrying costs on the deal, we could be upside down early on. And then some of the other minimum assessments, maybe they, were too low or they need to be justified up from 350, but to go to 850,000, if you look at what they were put on as we had them as a shell before, that's well in excess of what our shell value before was. So, I just want to know if we're going to be able to talk about these things, or if we're not going to submit, then we probably won't submit a proposal if these things all have to meet this. And like some of the things where we buy land and we hold it for a number of years. And so the relevance, I'm trying to understand why if we don't say what we bought the land, or if somebody were representing what they paid for the land, if it's 5, 10 years or more ago, I'm not sure what the relevance of that is to the project.
So for a few of those, the basis in the land is one of the application requirements. So you would have to address that question. The comments about valuation, that's specifically in letter G of section 4 and letter H in section 4. So it doesn't say what the minimum values are. It says those issues will be addressed in the development agreement. Mm-hmm. We're pretty confident the way South Bell 4th played out, it didn't really work in terms of repayment. We've yet to repay it off 13 years into that project. It's projected to pay off before 20 years, but it's a little slower than we thought. It doesn't set values in there, but it is addressing that we need to address those in a development agreement. So if it's somebody that has not done one with us before and they're looking at this, they're going to know that this is something that they should be expecting to see from us. In terms of the plat value versus minimum industrial value immediately, our thought was that the plat exceptions apply, but you couldn't then apply for ag exemptions after that and farm the land and get it taxed as ag land, even though they're industrial lots. So that's a detail that you guys don't normally hear about. But that's kind of how we were thinking about that.
So Kelly and Chuck, I don't know which one of you would answer this. Kelly, you called out section 4G and H. Is section 4E also part of that same concern?
Yeah, so E, again, so what's clear in this is you have to say you're committed to building spec buildings for us. We would prefer them to be in this time frame of 12 months the first time out of the gate, and then 18 months after that, and have a valuation. The 850 that we put in there was based on current valuations of buildings we saw in Ames Community Development 4. They're all in excess of that. Shell values may not be that. That's a fair statement. So if a proposal comes in and suggests other things, we can look at it, and then we'll give a comparison to you of that.
Okay.
But obviously it'll be whoever proposes this to actually address these and not assume that they'll be able to negotiate their way out of it at a later date.
The land price is important because we want to make sure the developer gets to recoup the land price, but we're putting in all the infrastructure price. So we don't want to, we've done this before. We negotiate if you held it for 10 years, the value may have gone up, and we negotiate that. So we want to have a starting price, and then we put an inflation factor in it too. But we have to know what the original price was and how long you've held it, so we can negotiate that. So I think the developer has to make a return even on their land investment, but not dip into what we're subsidizing in the infrastructure part of it.
Sure, but when we buy farmland, we buy it and pay a price for it, assuming that there's no annexation, no zoning in place, and those things have a different value when you go through that process. And all the things that you're asking us to do here then make the land more valuable than just what you paid for it.
So you want some kind of return on it. That's why we'll negotiate that.
And
you'll tell us all those things, and we'll be able to add it on and justify it to the council now.
Okay. And the last thing I had was when you were talking about the proposed types of uses and excluded uses, I would argue that not everything that we have, some industrial uses that may not be large employers, but that are still beneficial to our community and still enhance our tax base, that not everything to say we can't have something if it's deemed not to low intensity employment uses. I mean, there are just some things that work out industrial that could have a pretty high land value, building value, could be fairly automated, that I would just hate to preclude uses when we're trying to grow to me, the main emphasis here is to grow our tax base and not necessarily employment when we already know we're short of employment. I mean, we
just put that in there because that's one part of the council's economic development criteria and matrix is not only tax base increase, but employment too. And that's how we judge it. If the council just wants to deal with tax base, that's a different thing. But that's also why we have to have a rapid repayment of the TIF, because you wait 20 years, you don't get any tax base. So it's a combination of them. But does it say it? I don't know. Would you say you can't do it, or that's how we'll?
In the application requirements, the developer has to propose uses that are allowed or excluded. So they could say, I want to do everything in GI or PI or whatever. And then, or they could say, I don't want to allow these things. We said specifically warehousing, mini storage, salvage, and other low intensity employee uses would not be viewed as industrial. I know for sure we don't want to look at subsidizing mini storage as part of this. So I'm not sure the intent, again, low intensity employment uses. Developer's going to propose that list to us.
Right.
We'll
That's
have to
could be
evaluate it.
subjective. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we're trying to go into this to
Yeah.
data centers
Right.
that don't have employment but have a high value. If that's what comes out of this, that would be surprising because the scale of this isn't for those types of buildings.
Some of
in the
this
first
we're
place.
thinking is because we're going to have competition and we compare. Obviously, you had one project with high tax value, a lot of employees versus someone with high tax value, no employees. You might get more points, remember?
Mm-hmm.
But maybe we're wrong. Maybe we're only getting one proposal and it's excluding someone from that. I don't think it's meant to. It's just, I think you would say it was a higher priority. High taxes, high employment.
But it's part of section 4, right?
So you have
So
to
it's-
submit
It's
your
a three.
proposed uses with the project.
Right.
Right, but it's.
You all can make the judgment eventually.
Yeah.
Can I ask just a couple high level questions? So remind us why we're doing an RFP.
So, I mean, how we even got to today.
Right.
So Mr. Winkleblack asked for a referral to look at adding more small industrial lots into the market for the city to be developed. You asked us to evaluate the need of that request. So back in July, Justin put an assessment together. Staff agreed that based on our inventory of available land, there was not a lot of lots under 5 acres that were really marketable and able to be used to address that segment of the market. So in July, you said to go forward and solicit proposals to see if TIF could be used as a way to motivate someone to put an industrial
That's
park.
not the question. The question is why, what you want it to be is fair. There's a request to have small lots to use an incentive that the council can offer, TIF. Rather than just say the first person who comes in the door asks for it, you're going to give it to them. Because when you give it to them, you're making that piece of property more competitive than anyone else because you are going to subsidize that development. So if you're going to use that incentive, you want everybody in the world of Ames to have a chance to compete for it.
And so that's a good sort of explanation of the background. And then I feel like this is way above our pay grade to go into. Is this agreement a standardized agreement that you would see with other communities, or is this really tailored for what we're doing here?
I mean, most of this is based off of 3 agreements that we had over 20 years in the
For
Ames
development.
Community Development Park.
Right.
Right. So the first Ames Community Park edition was in the early 90s, and it was an RFP process. There was 2 proposals. We picked one. And then from there on, there was later additions that weren't an RFP. They were just continuations with modified development agreements up until now. But the development park's full, or is essentially full at this point. We've viewed it as starting over and trying to find a new site.
But certainly other communities do something similar. I mean, to what degree is what we're doing consistent with what, if there's a best practices for this kind of thing? How is this
There is no
consistent with
best
that?
practice, no.
I guess I'm not familiar with what would be best practices. I mean, what's your goal?
I don't know if they've been
Community?
approached to, we're one of the few that have a large lot development now, and now we have a community development park. We're trying to get small.
Well, my goal is that we don't end up, I mean, a future council doesn't end up with unintended consequences. So the value of best practices is that we're trying to get out in front of those unintended consequences, because if we're just doing this on our own, we could be baking problems in. I mean, Chuck has raised some of these tonight. That's just a point of feedback. I mean, I'm a little apprehensive. I think Chuck has raised some valid concerns that perhaps we address by making sure we're looking at standardized documents. I mean, I feel like we're reinventing a wheel here in a situation where
We've had a wheel that's been successful for the last 20 years, we're trying to point out. Now, maybe the numbers you don't like yet, but that'll be submitted and you'll have to say, we're willing.
Right. We're just approving the RFP. We'll have an opportunity to evaluate the proposals.
so the RFP is important because how we structure the RFP is going to determine what comes in. So-
Right, but we have a model for that already. That's how South Bell was
But
developed.
that's sort of my point, is
Yeah.
that I'm not married to what we have.
Sure,
And
but
if-
it worked.
Well, or could it have worked better? We don't know that. Maybe I could ask Chuck, and then I'm happy to just let it go. Chuck, as you think about this RFP, are there any other things that we should be considering to try to come up with a fair RFP that's going to achieve our council goals? Because otherwise, we're going to be dealing with you, right? I mean, realistically, how many developers are there who are going to be submitting applications for this?
You have to
What?
ask.
I don't know. Chuck hopes there's nobody else. I'll tell you that. So they want-
So,
I guess a better question.
Are there any other, just ask this question, are there any other aspects of the RFP that you think as a council we should consider? Because none of us up here really are experts on this. So
I think the challenge is that when you compare, just like we do, there likely won't be another set my proposed piece of land aside. there won't be a one that's the same size, it's the same shape, that has the same amount of developable acres, that you're going to look at it and go, well, geez, this one's this, and now we have an identical piece that's 70 acres or 40 acres or 90 acres that you're going to say, oh, gee, it's so no, I think the process, and I think Steve laid it out pretty well, is that you have to open it up, because I get accused of that all the time. Oh, Chuck gets whatever he wants, you know. And so I'm happy to go through this process. I just want to be able to talk about some of the numbers that are dramatically different from what we talked about before. That's all. That's kind of where I started tonight, is can we have it? Or if I'm unwilling to do some of these things, but you say this is the only way that it's going to be, then we're probably not going to submit one, because there are some of these items in here that just are not going to work. When you cap the price, and I'm all about capping the price, but you're looking to guarantee the return from the city in a prescribed piece of time. And so then the onus comes back on, well, you have to have these minimum assessments, which I'm not opposed to minimum assessments, but when we don't know how long it's going to take to sell these things out, it's harder to say, if I'm in a free market and I'm saying, okay, I'm losing money here, I can raise the price, but I'm going to agree to what the cap on the price is. And you're going to say, well, you got to pay those taxes whether you're selling the lots or not. And so those are the type of things that I'm all about. I was one that said we want to keep the prices down to keep more people into the market, but then we need to have some flexibility, or we can be upside down pretty easy. And that's where I'm trying not to be.
Yep, thanks.
And so working through those things together, but the process doesn't need to be, in my opinion, the process is fine. It's the devil's always in the details, and I'd like to talk about some of those details.
Okay, thanks.
And the last thing in that there's unless I'm misreading it, in your RFP, there's the date is wrong on the.
At the end, yeah, I saw that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just so that.
Let's make sure.
Yeah. So
It's got a December date instead of the January.
Right.
yeah. So to be clear, this was the draft, and we'll go back through purchasing and get it issued through them. So there's a couple other things I've seen in there too they're there. But the intent is definitely to be end of January, back to council in February. So again, for budgeting purposes, if you're going to make a capital investment, we need to know these things because of the budget timing.
That's the problem. So Kelly, are you confident that the way we wrote it, preferred, is going to give Chuck flexibility in his on all the items?
I do, because I think you have to submit those minimum requirements. There is a prereq, right? You have to be not in the Prairie View Industrial Park.
You might not like that either.
No,
not you, the council, because that's a change. We're saying you incentivize the Prairie for the large lots,
Yeah.
which we see. I didn't think you wanted us to break up in the smaller lots in the area. So the owners of Prairie View might not be happy with us, just so you know, when they find out about it. I'm not sure. But I think it makes sense, because we're looking for a whole different
Right.
development here.
Apples and oranges.
Yeah.
And we are requiring a 10-acre site size. So if you don't own 10 acres, it would be a non-responsive RFP.
Right.
And the question came, how many are there? I mean, the land that Chuck's interested isn't even in the city yet. So it's kind of hard to guess about all of them, but there's not a lot of 10-acre vacant parcels in the city. There's a handful of them. Obviously, you're trying to bring in more land to meet that objective.
But if you had
it's not a
competition,
large universe of property.
you want to look if development's going to cost $1 million worth of TIF, and you're going to get 10 acres versus someone else is going to cost $500,000 and you're going to get 50 acres. You know, you could look at the subsidy per lot. That would allow you to make a decision. What's the best investment for the city? So there are ways we can analyze this, but there may only be one, and we won't have to analyze it. You just take the one proposal and see if it's a good enough deal or not.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
So Kelly, just before you take off, Chuck, what I heard you say was that there may be some proposal comes in with a lot of but-fors or what-ifs. Maybe you won't score the proposal because it doesn't really comply. Is that true or not?
I think, if they don't submit.
Let's take Chuck out of the equation. If someone sends something in and it's got,
the two mandatories are the 10 acres and you're not in Prairie View, and then you're supposed to submit a concept plan. Well, if you don't really submit a concept plan, how am I supposed to score it? If you don't identify uses, how am I supposed to score it? We'll take it in and decide if it's responsive.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Doesn't
again,
mean you had to have it fully engineered plan to illustrate your intent. That's not what this asks for. It just says for a concept plan of, and you have to have an estimate. Again, we can't evaluate your proposal if you don't tell us how much the infrastructure is likely to cost. So there's things that whoever responds will have to do for us to be able to do our job and inform you of whether it's a valid proposal or not.
I think we're all on the same page. I think the goal is not to issue a proposal that no one wants to respond to
Absolutely.
because it's so rigid.
There's
Then
no
we're just
point
going
to
through a
that.
bunch of exercises. If there is flexibility into it, recognizing that's going to come back to council and council might say yay or nay. So there's not essentially wasted time on staff's part or on the applicant's part. So
And normally I wouldn't care. We could delay this, but I'm afraid we'll lose a year because you're going to have to put this, even if it's TIF back geo bond, you're going to have to make that decision by budget time. That's why we're trying to get it in by January, and then we can evaluate it. So we can at least put it into the budget. Otherwise, you won't be able to do the infrastructure for another year. So that's what we're trying to, I think we're moving too fast, we're just trying to get it done.
Well, and I hope that as part of the process, we also, because we have been, and you have been acting upon the change to the urban fringe plan and some of those type of things to set up the annexation zoning and the availability of utilities. I hope it's looked at, where do we have infrastructure in, so we don't need to run infrastructure to get here before we can
That's a
do
cost. That will do that.
that piece as well. So that,
And plus, we're going to have to set up an urban renewal area to get this done too. So there's a lot of work to do. The council needs support of if you move ahead.
all your questions answered?
yes, sir.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comment? Close public input, and any further questions or comments for staff? All right. So looking for a motion,
Move alternative 1,
Second.
which is,
direct staff to proceed with issuing an RFP.
okay, thank you. Any discussion? Those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. All right, moving on to item 26, hearing on vacating utility easement across Red Lobster property located at 1100 Buckeye Avenue, which is continued from October 26, 2021. Hi, Tracy. Are we prepared to continue that hearing?
Yes, we have closed on that property and have received all the documents.
All right. So I declare the public hearing on vacating utility easement across Red Lobster property located 1100 Buckeye Avenue to be open. Is there anyone who wants to address council under item 26? Hearing none, declare the public hearing to be closed. Any questions for staff on vacating of the easement? Hearing none, entertain motion on resolution approving vacating easement.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Aye.
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 Okay, moving on to item 27, hearing on Iowa Creek Restoration and Flood Mitigation Project. Tracy?
Yes, this has been a long time coming. If you recall, we did a large flood study after the 2010 floods, and the project for that was this channel clearing that was decided upon as part of that project. We hired a design consultant in 2015 and then continued moving forward with the full build alternative and applied for a FEMA grant a couple different times and was finally awarded, and that agreement was signed in 2020. So now we have received construction bids. Trees were dropped earlier, and those trees will get mulched and incorporated into the temporary stabilization and permanent stabilization there, as well as the ones that have root wads on them will get incorporated into the stream banks and provide habitat, as well as controlling the flows to keep that into the middle of the stream. There's some rock deflectors, there's wetlands, there's over 142,000 cubic yards coming out of there. And then the Red Lobster north parking will be taken off, and a large modular block wall will be placed there. The south part of their parking lot their net, actually, I think, increasing by 1 parking space. So overall, Red Lobster is working out really well. And we're closing. We have 4 more properties just to close on, but everybody has signed all of the documents. It's just a matter of closing and handing the check to the last few. So if anybody has questions,
Any questions?
We have the permits from Army Corps of Engineers and DNR. So
Okay. All right, I'm going to declare the public hearing on the Ioway Creek Restoration and Flood Mitigation Project to be open, which would include items on the item 27A, B, and C. Anyone wish to address council on this item? Thank you.
My name is Jim Howe, residence at 912 Clark. I have a business, house welding and metal fabrication. I'm one of the thorns in the side of this particular project. I guess more than anything, I've been having issues getting a hold of people so earlier this month, well, last month, when the bids started going out, I had quite a few people approach me on how access and all that, which is fine. But the more I talk to people like Keller Excavating and PCI, the number of trucks and the amount of weight and all that was going to go across there somewhat scared me. And weight doesn't scare me usually, but so then I was trying to call the city. I couldn't get anybody to answer. We've been asking for a full set of prints and how this is all going to work. We finally got that yesterday about noon, I think, is when we finally got a full set of how this is all going to work. I guess more than anything, I'm somewhat just kind of bummed about if I've got a question, how do I get somebody to call me back? I'm at the shop from 6:30 in the morning till 9 or 10 at night, except for Sundays, and then I'm only there probably 8 hours. I keep calling and trying to get answers on things, and it's just very depressing to me that we can't get some things answered fairly quickly. Things like this driveway thing, if it busts up the asphalt and all, am I responsible? And finally we got a full set of drawings, and the gentleman I don't know what the engineering firm is that.
the land acquisition agent.
So anyway, I've talked to him yesterday or day before, whatever day this is. And so I don't mind them using the driveway. That's why they're easements. They need access and all that. I'm not sure I'll ever agree with this project. I mean, tonight when I'm walking my dog, I'm in the middle of the city, just going out my back door. Before, you couldn't tell you were in the city of Ames. When I went out the back door of the shop, I'd run my dog up and down the creek and all, couldn't tell. Now it's just this barren wasteland that I pray, I really do, that this all comes out. But it's definitely changing my backyard. I don't know how many people would be happy with someone coming in and saying, hey, I want to take half your yard and we're going to take all the trees and do what we want with it. I understand eminent domain, you're good to the people and all that, but it's going to be tough for me to ever really get on board with this project. I guess my main thing, and from what I'm understanding from the gentleman from the play, is there's going to be a person from the city every day that they're working, that if we have an issue, that we can talk to them directly, I'm hoping. I plan not to have any issues. I like to play nice, but when people I'm at the shop. I've left multiple messages on your phone and with your secretarial staff or whoever, and I never get calls back. I don't understand it.
I don't understand that either. So, and I know we've played phone tags a lot.
Let's any more comments you want to, we'll ask you to respond to his comment. Any other thing else you want to add, Jim?
I really hope this works, and I hope there is some tree stuff put back in. I mean, it's just so depressing to go out the door. It's just, you're in the middle of the city. I mean, one of the reasons we bought the lot way back when is it was, I mean, you could go out back and you didn't know your names. And now it's, I have more customers chewing my tush. What are you doing down there? It's like, this is not me. The derecho is so much more friendly to all those trees.
Right.
We've really put a hurt to them. So,
Okay.
and I understand, part of it, but if I can get some communication going on, it would really be helpful because I'm trying to run a business and I'm scrambling to figure out the legal rumbo jumbo in their contract. I am no lawyer. I don't want to be a lawyer. I'm a welder. So I guess I put my 2 cents in.
Thank you.
Are all your questions answered now?
Well, we're going to ask Tracy. to
I'm
respond to this
hoping.
question.
I mean,
Well, I'm not asking substantive. I just want to know, do you have questions that are still unanswered?
at this very moment, as of yesterday, I mean, I'm not even sure his name. We've signed all the paperwork. It's under duress, but I signed it. And so, I mean, it's going to go through. I just hope it turns out the way everybody thinks this is going to go. I mean, what really bums me is when they were adding the width of the bridge, they could have dug out and solved a lot of problems with all the silt built in on both sides of the bridge. I can walk under there and hit the I-beams. And when they had all the equipment in there, all the cranes, all the bulldozers, they said, no way, under God's green earth, we're going to take out these sandbars. And then 8 years later, we're going to take out the sandbars. But why didn't we do this when all the equipment was there, easily doable? It just irks me that we waste money in certain ways.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, we'll close public input. First of all, contact information, returning phone calls. How can he be helped by that? Or how can you
Yes.
resolve that situation?
Yes, so we have plain phone tag, and then when I've gone down to the office, they haven't been able to find him at various times. I admit that we've been disconnected at times. I've tried to get him answers on everything that he's asked. As far as during the bidding, I don't have any notifications that he tried to call me, but I know some of the contractors talked to him. It is in the plans that any broken up pavement as part of that access will be replaced by the contractor. So it's all taken care of in the plans. We have a pre-construction meeting tentatively scheduled pending this approval for tomorrow. So I'll know more information in the next few days as far as how they're planning to haul. That the access routes that are on the plans are optional. So it doesn't even guarantee that that's where the contractors are going to be hauling out of. All of the landowners, everybody in that area, and we'll have it on our website. There will be contact information for inspectors. We're actually going to have 2 different construction inspectors assigned to this one, along with myself. So there is going to be plenty of persons to be contacting, and they will be out there along with our engineering co-ops.
So if you can't get a hold of somebody, I guess the question is, could you talk to him afterwards and exchange other alternative phone numbers or emails so he can have some way to get in contact with people?
Mm-hmm.
And then the asphalt repair, is that documented in terms of where asphalt's broken or not broken? I know.
Yep, we will televise everything, and we always do on the plans. If it's a current break, we're not going to pay for it. But if it's broken up as part of the project, then we'll make sure that it's taken care of.
And then he asked about trees and landscaping. Has that been reviewed with him in terms of what's being done there? Or?
There's revegetation going in some areas. We cannot just replant this whole area with trees again. That is counter to the flood mitigation. So there are some trees lining some area, but it's going to look different.
Right. Okay. Any questions? All right, entertain a motion on resolution approving final plan specifications and awarding contract to Keller Excavating Inc. of Boone, Iowa, in the amount of $3,327,523.50.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Could I have a comment opportunity, Mayor?
Sorry.
I'm going to be voting against this because I've been voting against the project since the beginning. But like Jim, I hope that this actually turns out to be a project that solves some of our flood issues and that the restoration does what it's supposed to do in terms of returning some natural habitat and making things better along the creek than they are now.
Okay, thank you. Roll call, Amy.
Aye.
No.
Aye.
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 Aye. Thank you. Entertain a motion on resolution authorizing up to $700,000 in unallocated GO bonds to the project.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
No.
Aye.
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 Thank you. And entertain a motion on resolution approving the contract and bond.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Aye.
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 No.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to disposition of communications to council. We have 3 items. One's a letter from Douglas Har regarding I think it's the Ames 2040 plan, opposition to future development plans along Worrell Creek. It's my understanding that we just take this under advisement from the standpoint as we go through the 2040 plan. Number 2, Trevor, I think it's very nice that the student government sent a thank you note. Greatly appreciate that. Actually, it's the first one we've gotten, at least as long as I'm mayor, for meetings. So greatly appreciate it from that. So, and item 3, letter from Angie DeWard, chair of the Ames Public Art Commission, regarding a change in meeting format to allow participation via Zoom.
Mayor, we had also gotten an email. It was not this past Friday, but the Friday before, from a Cameron Gray about an art project in the parks, little free library thing. I would like, if we could address that with tonight's disposition.
Let's deal with this 3rd item, and then actually we have a workshop next week. I apologize. You're right. We did get one. And if that's okay, we'll put that on the next week's agenda.
Sure, thank you.
I wanted to follow up with him anyway on that.
Okay,
So.
thank you.
Put it on the agenda?
No. I'm sorry.
Put it in the next disposition.
Put disposition communication on the agenda. Yes, we're going to put it on the agenda.
I thought you said, it's getting late.
Thank you, Brian, for bringing that up. Is there any interest in doing anything with item number 3? If not, we will go ahead and send a letter saying that there's council is not.
I would move that we send a letter saying that we decline that request.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried. Thank you. Council comments. Gloria.
I was very happy to see our partners from the Community and Regional Planning Program presenting tonight. I know that they were very excited about the results of the first Play Ames Engagement Festival, and I'm hoping that we're going to find a way to create some sort of stable and consistent relationship and also pursuit of our efforts to engage the community more effectively. That's all I've got.
Thank you. Tim.
So Thursday is Veterans Day, and invite the public to the city's Veterans Day program. It will be held at the City Auditorium at 11 o'clock. Mayor Pro Tem Corriere will be giving the welcome on behalf of the city. I'm pretty excited about this program. Daniel O will be our featured speaker. The ISU Air Force ROTC will be the color guard. The Ames High School Concert Chorale will be performing as well as the Heart of Iowa Senior Band. So it's a great event. Encourage people to come out Thursday, 11 o'clock, City Auditorium.
Thank you. Rachel?
Nothing tonight, thanks.
Amber?
Nothing for me.
David?
I'd like to offer my congratulations to Anita Rollins to be sworn in as the new Ward 3 representative in January. She's been attending for months now. I want to thank you for taking on the responsibility of the office. And for the rest of y'all who got reelected, congratulations.
Thanks.
That's all I have. Bronwyn?
Nothing for me, thank you.
Trevor?
Just working with student government on some of the ideas we talked about at the joint meeting, and I'll be bringing those soon. So that is all.
Great, thank you. All right, and I have nothing this evening either, so I would entertain a question for Mr. Mark.
Counselor, do we have legal justification to go into closed session?
Yes, we do. I am pleased to report that Iowa Code Section 20.17 subsection 3 allows the council to go into closed session to discuss collective bargaining strategy.
I move that we go into closed session.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Aye.
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 Thank you.